All right, I'll just be sharing my screen. Okay, can everyone see the share screen? Is it visible to
Yes,
everyone?
make it full screen. Make it full screen. You can
Yeah,
see it.
is it visible?
Yeah, yeah. Perfectly
Okay.
visible and you are audible.
Okay, you just let me know if there is a problem with the visibility. Okay. All right. So Vedic astrology for beginners, as I said, this is meant to be a zero-level class for all those who are interested in learning how this science works. Okay, it's not only a science; it's also an art. All right. So Vedic astrology, the basis is, of course, it comes from the Vedas, because everything comes from the Vedas, right? Everything comes from the Vedas. It is actually regarded as a vedanga, right? So the meaning of the word vedanga is actually a limb. Anga is a limb. Okay, so vedanga is a limb of the Veda, right? So if you look at it, so Vedas, they are the oldest ancient Hindu sacred texts, considered by many to be the most authoritative of all texts. That means it's actually incorrect to use the word Hindu, but because we are very familiar with it, so I'm using it. But the Vedas, they go beyond religion. Okay, and it is the source of all yogic teachings that you come across. Like, the Vedas are actually the source of all that is. Okay, everything that is there in existence have been mentioned in the Vedas. So the Bhagavad Gita, or the later on the Upanishad teachings that we come across, these are all from the Vedas. Okay, so the Hindus, they regard the Vedas to be authorless or not of man. It is known as apurushaya. Okay, it is believed that the Vedas were revealed to the rishis when they were in a state of deep meditation. Okay, when they were in a state of deep meditation. So instead, they believe that they were originally revealed to rishis through divine inspiration. So divine inspiration here means when the rishis were in a state of deep meditation, they accessed a part of the cosmic consciousness, and later on they became the Vedas. Okay. So the Vedas are also referred to by some as shruti literature. All right, meaning what is heard as opposed to other sacred smriti texts, meaning to be remembered. So shruti and smriti, these are the two classifications of literature in Hinduism. Okay, so shruti means what is heard, and smriti means what is written down. And every time there is a clash between the shruti and the shruti will always win the debate. Okay, so if there is any doubt regarding the validity of the scriptures, then shruti will always get the first preference as compared to smriti, right? And because the Vedas are shruti, they are considered to be the direct word of the divine. I'll tell you why it is shruti. Okay, so Vedas, if you look at it, they are a collection of various hymns and mantras and so on. Now the point is, those mantras, if you try to write them down, those mantras will not be the same. If I give an example, for example, suppose rain is falling down. Okay, so what do we hear? We hear the sound of falling rain as a tapping sound, tap tap tap. So can you write down the tap sound? Can you write it down? It's not possible to write, right? Somebody will write it tip tip tip, and somebody will write it tap tap tap. Okay, so it is exactly how the rain falls, and that's how the sounds they got recorded and they got transmitted from one generation to the other. And because they are shruti, it ensures that you cannot write down the Vedas. So nowadays there is a trend that you will get to buy the Vedas. There will be a copy of the Rig Veda. There will be a copy of the of the Sam Veda. So those are highly manipulated texts. You can only hear the Vedas. Okay, it is strictly prohibited that Vedas should be written down. And every time you come across a written copy or something like that, it means it's a defective one. Okay, it's a modified or an altered one. So Vedas, if you have to learn the Vedic texts, you always have to go to a parampara, which is actually responsible, or which is involved in preserving the Vedic knowledge, right? All right. So each Veda will comprise of 4 parts: the Samhitas, which of course are known as the hymns, then the Brahmanas, so the rituals, then the Aranyakas, which is the theology, and the Upanishads, which are the philosophies. So out of this, Upanishads, of course, have become the most famous because they are regarded as the Vedanta. That means the summary of what is there in the Vedas. Okay, so I'll cover this in details. Right. So we'll just go look at the four parts. So the Brahmanas, they are ritualistic texts that include precepts and religious duties. Each Veda has several Brahmanas attached to it. Okay, so these are the guidelines. Okay, these are the manuals for all the rituals that are meant to be done. Okay. Then comes the Aranyakas or the theologies. So they intend to serve as objects of meditation for ascetics who live in forests and deal with mysticism and symbolism. So what is happening is everyone speaks about meditation these days. Okay, everyone speaks about meditation, but no one knows what to do or how to meditate, what to do during meditation. People will tell you they don't do anything, but is it possible? Doing nothing is of course a theory that has been made famous by the New Age philosophy. But at the end of the day, what is happening is that you have to know what to do during meditation. Only then you will be able to only then you'll be able to fulfill the objective that the meditation is trying to do. So there are different types of Kriya yogas. Okay, there are different types of Kriya yogas. For those who are familiar with me, they will know that I have put up a few meditations of Kriya yoga on Gumroad. So every meditation, if you have listened to the audios, then every meditation, it will have a different objective. So the Aranyakas will actually tell you what objectives are there for each meditation. But now what has happened is in the modern age, people say you meditate, but what you need to meditate, there is a definite roadmap on what you are trying to achieve through that meditation. So everything is contained in the Aranyakas. Okay. Then the Upanishads. So these are the most important. This is the most important part of the Veda. Okay. So the Upanishads, they form the concluding portions of the Veda and therefore are called the Vedanta or the end of the Veda. Okay. So this word Vedanta has of course become very, very famous in recent times. Everyone uses the word Vedanta. You have a organization named Vedanta, right? Some people are actually naming their children as Vedanta. So this actually is Vedanta is not a separate word. It actually signifies the Upanishad or the end of the Vedas. So the Upanishads, they will contain the substance or the essence of Vedic teachings. So the meaning is Upa means by, Nishad means sit down. So the meaning is listen by sitting down. So sitting down and listening to whom? Listening to the Guru who is trying to teach you the essence of all Vedic teachings. Now there are actually initially there were 3 Vedas. Okay, initially there were 3 Vedas. No, but now we have 4 Vedas. Okay, now we have 4 Vedas. So the Atharva Veda is a very recent entrant. It happened in the in the Treta period of the Ramayana. Right? I'll come to it on this. So the first Veda, the Rig Veda. This is the oldest of the Vedas. Okay, the Rig Veda is a collection of hymns and is the main source of information on the Vedic civilization. So everything that happened, all the rituals, all the ritualistic things that happened during the Vedic civilization is found in the Rig Veda. It contains the earliest form of all Sanskrit mantras. So the Sanskrit that is there in the Vedas, that is known as Vedic Sanskrit, and it is very much different from the Sanskrit that is used nowadays. The normal Sanskrit that we use nowadays, it's very much different from it. Okay, so it's actually easier than the normal Sanskrit, right? So if someone is qualified in Sanskrit, they'll understand what I'm trying to say. Nevertheless, so it dates back to 1500 to 1000 before Common Era. Some scholars will date the Rig Veda as early as 12,000 BCE to 4000 BCE. So this is just I just put this for information purpose. The actual pronunciation is Rigved. Okay, it's not Rig Ved, it's Rigved. Right? This is the actual pronunciation. Okay. So just like the Rig Veda is the book of mantras, the Rig Vedic Samhita or the collection of mantras consists of 1017 hymns or suktas covering about 10,600 stanzas divided into 8 ashtakas, each having 8 adhyayas or chapters which are subdivided into various groups. So you can see the importance of the number 8, right? So the number 8, it not only stands for Saturn, but it also stands for anything that is infinity. Okay, you can see the importance of the number 8 in the Veda as well, right? So the hymns which are present in the Rig Veda, they are the work of many authors or seers who are known as the rishis. Okay. So now there are 7 primary seers identified: Atri, Kanva, Vashishta, Vishwamitra, Jamadagni, Gotama, and Bharadwaj. So these rishis, or these 7 seers, they are the ones who are responsible for the gotra system. Okay, so if you know your gotra, each gotra will be connected to a specific rishi, right? Now there were people in the Vedic age. There were people who did not know their gotra. Okay, so in that, what happened in that case was Rishi Kashyapa. He, the father of Rishi Kashyapa. If people are not aware, he is the father of both the devas and the asuras. Okay, so Rishi Kashyapa, he had a huge ashram where he used to grant shelter to everyone, right, to the orphans and to the abandoned ones. So these people, they did not know their gotras, because you can know your gotra only from your parents, right? So because they did not know their gotras, so Rishi Kashyapa gave them his gotra. That is the reason you have so many Kashyap gotra people out there. Okay, so for example, suppose someone is a Alamanyo Gotra, so he or she can trace back his lineage to Rishi. So all the rishis will have different gotras named after them. Okay, Vashishta is a very famous gotra, as we know. All right. Next, we come to Samaveda, the book of song. Okay, so Samaveda is purely a liturgical collection of melodies. Saman. Okay, the hymns in the Samaveda, used as musical notes, are almost completely drawn from the Rig Veda and have no distinctive lessons of their own. That means this can be considered as a derivation, right? This can be considered as the derivation of the Rig Veda. So Sama is also a derivative of the word Soma. Soma means what? Soma means a divine intoxicating liquor, right? So Soma, it is believed that the juice, it is a divine juice. So that Soma of the Rig Veda is actually contained in the Samaveda, right? So what David Frawley, he is of course a very renowned scholar and Vedic astrologer. He says that if the Rig Veda is the word, the Samaveda is the song or the meaning. If the Rig Veda is the knowledge, Samaveda is the realization. If the Rig Veda is the wife, the Samaveda is her husband. So the Rig Veda and the Samaveda actually share a husband-wife relationship, just like the sun and moon. Okay, as we proceed in this topic, we'll come to know that how it is very obvious the moon does not have light of its own. It reflects the light of the sun. So just like the Rig Veda is the essence of all Vedic teachings, the Samaveda contains the juice from that Rig Veda. Okay. All right. So next we come to Yajur Veda. This is the book of rituals, right? So the Yajur Veda is also a liturgical connection and served as a practical guidebook for the priests who execute sacrificial acts while muttering simultaneously the prose pairs and the sacrificial formulae, or the Yajus. Okay. So the Yajur Veda, it acts as a manual. Okay, it acts as a manual for all the rituals that were performed in the Vedic age or in the Vedic civilization. So this is much similar to the book of dead of the Egyptians. Okay, so if anyone has the time, you are actually asked to go through the book of the dead. Okay, the copy of the book of the dead is of course easily available online. So you can just go through it and you can see a lot of similarities with the Yajur Veda. All right. So now there are 6 complete recessions of Yajur Veda: Mandayandina, Kanva, Taittiriya, Kathaka, Maitrayani, and Kapisthala. Okay. So these form different parts of the Yajur Veda. All right. Now we come to the 4th Veda. Okay, so this is controversial. Why? Because originally, as I said, there were only 3 Vedas, but then the 4th Veda, it got included during the age of the Ramayana. Okay, during the Treta period, right? So what happens? The Atharva Veda is completely a book of occult. Okay, that is the reason I have written it as the book of spells. So most scholars do not consider this as a Veda. It consists of occult spells and charms prevalent at this time. So if you come across a physical copy of the Atharva Veda, you can see all the detailed rituals that are there for obtaining unlimited wealth, for obtaining ageless health, for obtaining glowing skin, for killing people also there are rituals. So the Atharva Veda, it forms the basis of most tantric texts. So people will say that the Vedic texts and the tantric texts are different, but no. If you look at the basics, if you go to the core philosophy, then you will find that all the tantric texts have been derived from the Atharva Veda. All right, so I'll just share a small small anecdote with all of you. So what happens is, we all know in the Ramayana, after Sri Ram came back from the Vanvas, what happened was, there was a Shudra whose name was Shambhu. So Shambhu, he was killed, and before he was killed, silver was poured into his ears. So this is the basic premise of the entire story. Okay, so the modern day scholars, they say that in Ram Rajya there is no place for Shudras. Okay, this is the argument that most modern day scholars will give you. But the point is that you have to know the reason why Shambhu was killed. The reason was that he was trying to do spells from the Atharva Veda. Okay, we all know that Shambhu was killed for reading the Veda, but there is hardly any mention of the fact that he was actually trying to do some mischievous spells using the Atharva Veda, and that is the reason Shambhu was killed. Okay, so this is how you can draw out the connection of how dangerous the Atharva Veda was at that point of time. All right, so now we come to the meat of our discussion. So Vedanga, right? So there are 6 Vedangas. As I said, Vedanga refers to a Anga means a limb, and Vedanga means the limb of the Veda. Okay, so there are 6 Vedangas. So each of the limbs have to function correctly for a proper understanding of the Veda. So first is Vyakarana, that is grammar. Then comes Chandas. So Chandas is Sanskrit prosody. So what it means is that there would be a, if you look at the IANS versions of how Sanskrit is written in English, you'll see that in some cases there would be just an example of this, there would be an underline over the A word. So A, if you see an underline over the A, there will be A. Okay, so just like if you write Panchanga in English, it is Panchanga. Okay, but if you actually pronounce it properly, it is Panchanga. So that A becomes A. Okay, so this is Chandas. Then comes Siksha, enunciation, of course, Nirukta, etymology. So intonation means whether you are pronouncing a word in a very high pitched tone, or whether you are pronouncing a word in a low pitched tone. And etymology is something that deals with the origin of the words. As I said, the main reason why Vedas are not written is because they are based completely on the natural sounds that were available at that point of time, or the sounds that could be identified by the humans. So the humans, the rishis who actually compiled the Vedas, they were very particular about the sounds that they were hearing. And the sounds have, if you are pronouncing a Vedic mantra, the sounds have to be exactly the same way how the rishis produced. Okay, for example, suppose someone is actually pronouncing the bija mantra cream, okay, KREEM, cream. So some people will have the tendency of pronouncing it as cream. Okay, some people will pronounce it as cream, right? So the Nirukta will tell you whether it is cream, when to pronounce it as cream, or when to pronounce it as cream. So that is how you have to understand. Then comes Kalpa, the rituals involved. And finally, this is the topic that we want to learn, right? So jyotish, or astronomy and astrology. Okay, it's an amalgamation of both. All right. So now the Vedangas have been actually assigned, some body parts, right? So Vyakarana is said to be the face, Chandas is said to be the legs, Shiksha is said to be the breath, Nirukta is said to be the ears, Kalpa is said to be the hands, and Jyotish, of course, is the eye, because it is related to light, Jyoti, right? All right. Now, just to come to the basics just to come to our perspective of things. Whenever you are learning Jyotish, the ones who will be learning it for your own benefit, and later on, if you are learning Jyotish to help people out by means of consulting or things like that, every time you take notes, you should always use a red pen. Okay, you should always use a red pen to take your notes. Okay, you should take your notes in reading. Why? Because in Jyotish, there are 3 primary karakas: the Sun, Jupiter, and Ketu. Right? I'll come to the point why these 3 are the main karakas of Jyotish. But Jyoti represents light, and then light is derived straight from the Sun. Okay, and because the Sun is fire, so we are just honoring the Sun by taking Jyotish notes with a red pen. This is very, very essential. If you have tried taking Jyotish notes with blue ink pens, I'm sorry, if you have tried taking Jyotish notes in blue ink, just try doing the same by using red ink. You will notice a huge difference in your approach. Okay. So this is something that is very, very essential. That is the basic of all Jyotish teachings. Always take Jyotish notes in your in red pen. Okay, and the background should be white, right? The background should be white because if the sun is involved, and in some way the moon will also be involved. All right. Okay. So Jyotish. Jyotish is the study of all facets of the lords of light, the sun, the moon, planet, and the stars. So as I said, this is not only astrology, it's a compendium or an amalgamation of astrology as well as astronomy. All right. So different traditions will, different traditions will use different mantras, right? So the mantra that is most effective in my case, what I have found is the mantra that is actually associated with the tradition of Achyutananda Dasa. He is of course the the founder of the tradition that Pandit Sanjay Dutt ji belongs to. Okay, so the basic mantra is Hare Ramakrishna. Hare is the energy of Jupiter. Okay, why? Because Jupiter sustains. Jupiter represents the Akasha or the ether element who sustains things. Okay, Rama is the energy of the sun, and Krishna is the energy of the moon. So the sun is creating your resources, and the moon is giving you that motherly love or that motherly comfort. So this is a tip again. The tip is that if you are, if you are reading a chart basically, so you should always chant this mantra Hare Ramakrishna 12 times before doing a chart analysis, because that is the 12 times will represent the 12 houses or the 12 bhavas of the chart. Okay, so the other mantra that can be used is Namah Shivaya, not Om Namah Shivaya, but Namah Shivaya. Okay, Namah Shivaya. This is actually mentioned in the Prashna Marga that if you want to understand the chart, then chant Namah Shivaya 12 times. Okay, and finally, another mantra that can be used is Om Gurave Namaha. Okay, that is a salutation to the Guru element. Not to the it is commonly mistaken that it is a common mistake to believe that Om Gurave Namaha stands for Jupiter, but no, it's not for Jupiter. It is for the Guru that is inside you, for your Upaguru. Okay, it is for your Upaguru, right? So these are the three mantras that you can use. So anyone, if you are doing a chart analysis, just chant Hare Ramakrishna or Namah Shivaya or Om Gurave Namaha 12 times, right? So it's not Guruve Namaha, it's Gurave Namaha. This is another common mistake that that people do. It's not Guruve, it's Gurave. Okay, Om Gurave Namaha, right? Okay. So now what happens is these secrets of Jyotish, they are usually taught as mythological stories. Okay, they are actually taught as mythological stories, and those myths. So myths are nothing but stories that have evolved from one generation to the other, right? In our tradition, in the Indian tradition or in the Hindu tradition, myths are very, very important because they contain some basic underlying principles that cannot be, that cannot be expressed in words. So myths are actually advantageous, and using myths are actually advantageous in the sense that they help you to learn the secrets of the esoteric secrets of any field in the form of stories, right? So now let's look at this thing, the story of how the 12 rashis or constellations of the zodiac got their lords and the planets who ruled them. So how the myth connects with the story, right? So just for the uninitiated, Jyotish is a play of 9 planets, right? The zodiac, the sky is divided into 12 zodiacs, and will be 12 houses which will contain the zodiacs. So this is just an overview of the people who are uninitiated. Now let's look at it. So in the beginning were sun and moon, the king and queen of heaven. Okay, so in the planetary cabinet, so just listen to this carefully because I'll be explaining a lot more secrets that are there as compared to these lines. Okay, so in the beginning were sun and moon, the king and queen of heaven. So the sun in the planetary cabinet, the sun represents the the king, and the moon represents the queen. Okay, the sun and the moon. Why the moon is the queen? Because the moon derives all its light from the sun. They ruled from the constellations of Leo and Cancer respectively. So the sun ruled the entire area of Leo, and the moon ruled the entire area of Cancer, right? Why Leo? Because the sun is the king and Leo is the territorial constellation. The king needs to have his territory, right? The moon is the queen. Although it is the queen, it is also a female, so the moon is also the mother, right? So Cancer is the home environment. So the moon lords Cancer, all right? Mercury, who rules communication, asked the sun. Mercury, who rules communication, asked the sun for some land in the zodiac. Okay. Now, if you look at Mercury, Mercury is actually a eunuch planet. It does not have a gender. But apart from being a eunuch planet, Mercury also has a forked tongue. That means he will indulge in dual speaking. Right? Mercury is the eternal businessman. Right? Mercury is the eternal businessman, and if you are doing business, he is a Vaishya caste planet. So if you are doing business, you need to have a forked tongue. Right? If you look at all businessmen, you'll see that they will never take sides. Right? They will never take sides. They'll never have opinions because they are more concerned in doing business. So Mercury will always have a forked tongue, right? So Mercury, who rules communication. So Mercury is the talker. He is the smooth talker because he rules Gemini. So he rules communication. He asks the sun for some land in the zodiac. The sun, being a magnanimous king, granted Mercury the rulership of Virgo. Now what happens is that, see, the sun is a king, but what sort of king is he? He is a magnanimous king, right? So if someone has an exalted sun, or if sun is very well placed in someone's chart, that person will be very, very magnanimous. And if sun is badly placed, that person will be a miser, will be a spendthrift, right? So this is the secret. So the sun, being a magnanimous king, granted Mercury the rulership of Virgo. Okay, so this Virgo, it actually does not represent Mercury's zodiac. Mercury's the communication, the sign of communication is Gemini, right? But the sun, he granted Mercury the rulership of Virgo. Virgo is a very analytical sign. Okay, and because Mercury is also the significator of intelligence, so it also rules Virgo, which is the sign of analysis, right? So if you look at people who have Virgo as their moon sign or Virgo as their ascendant lord, these people, they will be very, very choosy. They will have opinions about everything. They will have strong opinions regarding what is bad and what is good. They will try to dissect and analyze everything. Okay. All right. So Mercury is well known as a dual planet, a master of duplicity who speaks with a forked tongue. So this is something that I mentioned. He has a dual nature, right? He has a dual nature. What is a dual nature? That, see, in astrology, some planets will be active during the day. For example, Sun or Jupiter. Okay, they will be active during the day. Planets like Saturn or Venus, they will be active during the night. But Mercury, it will be active throughout the day. Why? Because Mercury rules money, and money is always needed. Money is always needed throughout the entire day. So that is the reason Mercury is a dual planet. So he's a master of duplicity because he's a trader. He will of course engage in double speak, right? So Mercury rules both day and night, and then at night he made the same request to the moon for a piece of zodiac as it had made to the sun. So Mercury in the morning he went to the sun and he acquired Virgo for himself. Now he made the same request to the moon, and the moon. Why did the moon give him another piece? So the sun is the soul and the moon is the emotional mind, right? The sun is the significator of the soul. So the soul, it feels nothing, it just experiences, right? It just experiences. All the domain of feeling system is in the hands of the moon. So the moon, it is the emotional mind, and the mind is very insecure because it has no independent light of its own. It only reflects the soul, and this is a fact, isn't it? If you are concerned only with your feelings, if you're not concerned about the bigger scheme of things, you will of course end up being a very selfish person, right? So since it is insecure, the mind is always trying to aggrandize itself. That means the mind is always building castles in the air, right? The mind is always thinking about the future or the past. The mind will never think about the present moment. That is the reason you see most of the spiritual gurus, they will tell you be in the present moment. That is enough. Even if you don't meditate, if you are only in the present moment, that is enough. So why? Because if the mind comes to the present moment, then the mind, the mind settles down, right? Otherwise, the mind is very insecure, because you can be insecure only when you think about the future. The future is something that has not yet arrived, and the past is something that you cannot change because it is gone. So either ways, you cannot change either the past or the future, right? So because the mind is insecure, so it is always trying to aggrandize itself. It is always trying to, it's always trying to cook up stories, right? So it often tries to duplicate processes which are part of the life of the soul. So this happens with all of us, right? It happens with all of us. You're going to buy something, and then you see something which is more beautiful, which is more grand. All of a sudden, whatever you wanted to buy, that loses its prominence, and you end up buying something that you see for something that you see for new, right? This happens with everyone. It's not only a female phenomenon as most people tell you. It happens with everyone. If you see something more beautiful, something more grander, then the mind tries to go for that more beautiful thing because it's trying to, it's trying to satisfy itself. So the moon granted Mercury. So Mercury, although if you look at the stories of the planets, right? So later on, maybe we can have a class on how the on the scriptures relating to the stories of the planet. Okay. So in the stories of the planet, Mercury is the illegitimate child of the moon, right? In that story, what happens is the moon, he kidnapped Tara, who is the wife of Jupiter, and in the sexual union between moon and Tara, Mercury was born, right? So because moon is the mind, Mercury is the thinking mind. Okay, just remember this difference. The moon is the mind and the Mercury is the thinking mind. That is the reason if you have moon in Virgo, or if Mercury is in Cancer, or if moon and Mercury are joined together, then that person will be extremely analytical, because that person will be thinking 24/7. Okay, that person will be thinking 24/7. So the moon granted Mercury the positions of Gemini and Virgo. The Gemini is the sign of sexual union, is the sign of sexual copulation, right? The Sanskrit word is Mithun. Okay, the word Mithun actually comes from Maithuna, right? Maithuna means what? Maithuna means sexual encounters. Okay. Now Venus is the significator of desire. Venus saw what Mercury had done and he made the same request. Now the Sun, he is also the epitome of honesty, was too royal to gift away the same space twice. So again, the secret is, because the Sun is the epitome of honesty, if someone has an exalted Sun, or if someone has a very well-placed Sun, that person will be extremely honest, right? And if someone has a debilitated Sun, or if someone has a Sun which is afflicted by malefics, that person will be very dishonest, right? The Sun is also the primary significator of royalty. Okay, the Sun is also the primary significator of royalty. So the Sun, he was too royal to give away the same space twice. So as such, the Sun gave away the space of Libra to Venus. Now why Libra? Because just like Mercury represents money, Venus represents businesses. Okay, if you are a businessman, then your Libra will be very good. Your Libra has to be very good, right? So Libra represents the Libra represents the marketplace. Okay, Libra represents the marketplace, and that is one reason why why Saturn exalts in Libra, right? So Libra is also the space for relationships. That is the reason the natural 7th house of the zodiac is ruled by Libra. I'll come to that in details in a few minutes. So Venus, just like Mercury, Venus repeated the same request to Moon and he obtained Taurus thereby. Okay, so Taurus is actually the sign of the sign of food and drinks. Okay, so the Moon also has a very definite relationship with Taurus. I'll explain that later on. So seeing that what Venus or desire had done, Mars action. So Mars is a significator of action. If your Mars is very strong, you will be very active, right? If your Mars is weak, you will be very lethargic. Okay. So Mars did the same, obtaining Scorpio and Aries from Sun and Moon respectively. That is, Mars went to the Sun and the Sun gave him Scorpio. Mars went to the Moon gave him Aries. So similarly, requests from Jupiter. Now Jupiter is your wisdom. Okay, Jupiter is your wisdom. Learning is Mercury, wisdom is Jupiter, right? Whatever knowledge you gather from your learning, that is Jupiter. So Jupiter gains Sagittarius from the Sun and Pisces from the Moon. Now comes Saturn, right? Now comes Saturn. So Saturn actually represents renunciation. Okay, Saturn represents renunciation. So Saturn represents renunciation. So Saturn is also slow. That is the reason one name of Saturn is Manda, right? One name of Saturn is known as Manda. So Saturn also represents renunciation. So Saturn is a representative of things that are slow. So he is very slow to catch on. So he was very slow to catch on. And he is always the last to know. So if someone has Moon in a Saturnian sign, or if someone has a Saturn Moon combination, that person will be, information will come very late to him or her. Okay, so this is an indication. This is something that you can use in your predictions, right? So always last to know got what was left on both sides, Capricorn and Aquarius. So now what we can derive from this story. Okay, so this order also reflects the evolution of embodied consciousness, which arises from the soul and is experienced first in the emotional mind. As objective thought gradually develops, so does the thinking mind. Okay, so as mentioned in the story, the soul, after the soul is born, the mind starts learning things. Okay, and all experiences that the soul experiences, right, and all the experiences that the soul has, those experiences are recorded in the emotional mind, right? And as the objectivity of thought develops, the thinking mind also develops. So this relates to the development of the thinking mind. It relates to the development of Mercury. And as you think more, your desires will be more. Of course, that is the reason in astrology, Mercury and Venus, they are regarded as very best friends, as very good friends. Okay, it's an entirely different matter that Mercury will debilitate in a Venusian sign and Venusian will debilitate in a Mercurial sign. But the more you think, the more you desire. And this is very, very true, right? This is very, very true. This is the reason why, why most spiritual gurus will actually ask you to meditate. Because once you meditate, the mind stops overthinking. The mind stops thinking literally. And once it stops thinking, you will not have any desires, right? And the core or the basic philosophy, basic premise of all spiritual teachings is that, you know, uh, the less you think, the less desires you'll have. Okay. So desires lead to action, and in order to actualize those desires, right? So what happens? You can act only when you have a desire to act, right? Suppose I am telling you to move a finger. You cannot move a finger on on my telling unless you have a desire to move that finger. Okay. So in order to actualize, in order to achieve those desires, you need to act, right? There is a big new age gimmick going on in the name of the law of attraction, right? I just had a very good debate yesterday regarding how this law of attraction is false or something. But even in the word attraction, the last word is action. Okay. So why only thinking you cannot achieve your desires? You have to act, you have to take action. Action is the basic premise of everything. You want to earn $1 million in lottery, you cannot earn just by thinking that I'll earn, I'll think, you just cannot earn $1 million by just thinking that I'll earn $1 million. You have to buy a lottery ticket for this thing. So that buying of that lottery ticket represents action, right? That action is signified by Mars, right? And then from action comes wisdom, as one learns the beneficial and detrimental results of good and bad actions. So only when you act, you can come to know whether that action was good and or that action was bad. And as human beings, this is our greatest limitation. Whenever we act, we never know whether a certain action will be good or a certain action will be bad. We can only know after we experience the results of that action. That is the reason most people, they will take reference of the Shastras to say, okay, this is good, this is bad. That is the reason, the Bhagavad Gita is always stressing on good action. That means the Bhagavad Gita is a manual that will tell you what good actions are or what good bad actions are. But it's fine if you don't want to follow the manuals, and of course you have to experience it by your own experience, right? And only when you get that experience, there will be wisdom. That means this refers to the evolution of Jupiter. Okay, this refers to the evolution of Jupiter. And then when wisdom finally matures, renunciation becomes inevitable because you become satisfied with what is bestowed upon you by nature. You're happy with whatever remains. So when you are mature, okay, when you are filled with wisdom, you will finally understand that everything is predestined. Okay, there is a big debate regarding free will and destiny. Is everything destined or is it free will? No, everything is predestined. I'm speaking this from experience. Most of you will say that, okay, no, we want to experience it ourselves. You are most welcome. But at the end of the day, you will understand that everything is predestined. So when you understand that everything is predestined, you'll obviously have an attitude to let go of everything. Okay. Whatever comes is a reward from God. Whatever is going is also a reward from the same God. Okay. That's what we are trying to look at, right? So when there is renunciation, when there is a maturity in your wisdom, you will be satisfied with whatever is bestowed upon you by nature, and you are happy with whatever remains. So you're not bothered with whatever comes, you're not bothered with whatever goes away from you. And this state is actually known as Uchishta in Sanskrit, right? And this can be a great remedy for Saturnian afflictions. Whenever Saturn comes over your moon sign, or whenever Saturn transits the 12th house or the second house from your moon, that period is known as Sadesati, right? That period is known as Sadesati. Now, what happens is that in that period, People are actually trying to hold things, and that is a very big mistake they make. That means Saturn is trying to teach them renunciation. The greatest or the biggest lesson from Saturn is renunciation. It tries to make you realize that you own nothing, right? You own nothing, and it is a fact, isn't it? Whenever you die, your clothes will be left behind. You leave behind your clothes. You cannot even take your body. It will either be mixed with the soil, or it will be consumed by the fire, right? Even your body is not your own. So why to get attached? Why to get attached to relationships? Why to get attached to people? Why to get attached to situations? So that is something that Saturn is trying to teach you. Now Saturn is a very malefic planet. It is a very cruel planet. Okay, so if you are getting the wisdom from, if you are getting the wisdom from what Saturn is trying, what lesson Saturn is trying to teach you, if you take that wisdom and act accordingly, Saturn will be very happy with you. And if you don't, then of course Saturn will punish you. Okay, so renunciation is the ultimate lesson that Saturn is trying to teach you. Okay, all right. So now the main parameters in Vedic astrology are, as I said, Rashi. So zodiac signs. The entire sky is mapped into 12 zodiac signs. Okay, the Grahas or the planets that lie underneath everything that happens or exists in this world, events, individuals, and objects. Now there is a difference between the signs and the planets. You can imagine the signs to be an open, to be a field. Okay, some field will contain rice, some field will be barren, some fields may contain you know may contain a martial land or crocodiles beside. So those are all rashis, and the grahas, you can imagine them to be vehicles that are trying to run on those areas. Okay, so SUV will not be able to run on a marshy soil, right? That is how suppose an elephant is walking on a marshy land, that elephant will be very, very afraid. Maybe there is a crocodile that will grab my feet. That is the reason Jupiter, okay, that is the reason Jupiter, who represents elephants, gets very, very afraid in Capricorn, and Jupiter is getting debilitated in Capricorn again from the 14th of September, right? From the 14th of this month, Jupiter is getting debilitated. That is how there is a relationship, between the rashis and the grahas. Okay? And then there are also some other subparameters like nakshatras. Nakshatras actually represent the states of the mind. Of course, some people here are familiar with nakshatras, but later on maybe we can have a course on this. Okay, and then there are bhavas of the horoscope. Just like there are 12 zodiac signs, there will be 12 houses or 12 bhavas, right? Now, so the branches, now there are different branches of astrology. Okay, just like there are different branches of the Vedas or the Angas of the Vedas, similarly there will be different branches of astrology. So they are known as the skandhas or the Angas or the limbs, right? So the three skandhas and their meanings are, now Jyotish comprises of three skandhas. Number one is Ganita skandha. Okay, so Ganita skandha refers to astrological or astronomical calculations. If you are a good Jyotishi, you should be able to draw a chart by hand. You should be able to find out all the strengths and all the parameters manually, right? Of course, nowadays the software does it for you. But if you are actually learning, if you're actually seeking to be a very good Jyotishi, all those things, you should be able to calculate by hand. All right. Then comes Samhita skandha. So it includes sundry observations, including celestial omens or nimitta, the weather, economic cycles, earthquakes, and the varying fortunes of the population at large, house constructions, setting of water wells, etc. So Jyotish also has a part for nimitta. Okay, so nimitta is mainly used in Prashna, in Tajika Prashna or in Jamakol Prashna. Okay, so you can also use Jyotish to predict the weather, right? You can use Jyotish to predict economic cycles. Just like nowadays, everyone has a tendency of predicting how things will shape up for the country because of the pandemic and things like that, right? You can also predict earthquakes. So if Saturn gets into a Martian sign, or if Mars gets into a Saturnian sign, you can make a prediction that earthquakes will be there, right? The varying fortunes of the population at large. Now this is important to understand. Okay, everyone has their, you can say that, okay, suppose there is an accident, okay, and all people are, suppose 50 people are dying. You can ask whether all those 50 people had the destiny of dying together. It's a yes or a no, and a no, because all of us have an individual destiny. Okay, all of us have an individual destiny, but we are inside a bigger matrix that will also determine our collective destiny. You can consider the example of you can consider the example of vegetables inside a fridge, right? Suppose there are 5 types of vegetables. There is a carrot, there is a potato, there is an onion. So there are suppose there are 3 vegetables: a potato, a carrot, and an onion. Now each of them will have an individual time of decaying. The onion will decay at last, right? The onion will decay at last, then followed by the potato, followed by the potato, and the carrot will decay the fastest. But suppose the fridge goes out of control, the fridge has a problem, right? So the fridge has a problem. Then what happens? The fridge stops running. You are gone somewhere and the fridge stops running. Then all the things will start decaying together, and that is how the collective destiny happens. Okay, so we all of us here, all of us sitting here are like those vegetables in a fridge. We have our individual destinies, but at the end of the day, because we are in a particular nation, Desha Kala Paristiti, Desha means the nation, Kala means the time, Paristiti means the situation. We are all facing a particular situation together. So our destinies will also be involved by the situation. Our destiny will also be involved by the destiny of the country. Our destiny will also be will be impacted by the destiny of the times we are living. Okay. Then we have house constructions, the auspicious moments of constructing a house, the inauspicious moments of constructing a house, and so on. And then the setting of water wells. Okay, setting of water wells means there are ways to find out whether a place will contain water, or whether a place is fit for is fit for finding water or not. Okay, so even if now, for example, there are a few females out here, you can just check this for your reference. Your period will always happen when the transit moon will touch your natal Mars. For example, right now, if you look at the Panchanga, the moon is in Cancer. So if some female has their natal Mars in Cancer, they will have their periods within these 2.5 days. The moon will always remain in a sign for 2.5 days. Okay. So this is a part of mythical astrology. If you are trying to predict whenever a period will happen, you can just look at the chart of your planet, and you can just tell how if the transit moon visits the sign where the natal Mars is placed during that 2.5 days, the period will happen. If the person is not suffering from some pre-existing conditions like PCOD and things like that. Okay. Okay, Dr. Subrosa wants me to repeat. So just giving you an example. What happens is, suppose you are trying to find out because we are speaking about Samhita Skanda, right? So you can find out all the sundry. You can find out about the sundry events from this branch of astrology. So suppose I'm trying to find out when the period of a female will happen, when the female will start her menstrual cycle. So that menstrual cycle will start when the when the transit moon moves over the transit Mars. For example, right now, if you look at the Panchanga, the moon is in Cancer. So if some female has Mars in Cancer in the birth chart, okay, if some female has Mars in the birth chart right now, then within these 2.5 days, that female will have her periods. If the female is not, having some pre-existing medical conditions like PCOD or cyst or something like that. Okay, so all this is a part of Samhita Skanda, right? Yes, menstrual cycle can be manipulated, of course. That is a different thing. Okay, you can actually use medicines and things like that to modify your menstrual cycle. But that is a different thing for later on. Okay, we are ideally told that it should follow the lunar cycle. Yes, of course, it follows the lunar cycle because the moon remains in a sign for 2.5 days. So if you multiply 2.5 by 12, you'll get 28 days. Okay, that is the reason you are looking at lunar cycle. Okay, so the next skanda, or the next limb of jyotish, is the horoskanda. So this is the interpretation of horoscope. We are all familiar with this as we are all familiar with this as the chart reading that we see. Okay, Now, Prashna Marga by Narayan Nambutiri. This is a very popular book, Prashna Marga. Okay, by Narayan Nambutiri. He is a Keralite Brahmin. He states that there are 6 limbs of Jyotish. Just like there are 6 limbs of Vedas, there are 6 limbs of Jyotish, and an astrologer has to be conversant with all the 6 branches of astrology. And such an astrologer is known as the Daivagya. Okay, and that means the knower of God's intention. Right. So what are the 6 limbs of Jyotish? Number 1, it is Gola. Gola means spherical astronomy and direct observations, observational astronomy. Okay. So this is how you will observe the movement of the stars and the planets. That can be found from the Panchanga. Ganita, astronomical and astrological calculations. That means all calculations ideally should be done by hand instead of using a software. Jataka, this is birth or natal astrology, where you study the birth chart. Okay. Prashna, answering questions without the use of a natal horoscope or horary astrology, just as we spoke about the Samhita Skanda. So Prashna is all about interpreting the nimittas that may be present when the client is asking a question to the Jyotishi. All right. For example, suppose someone may be asking a question whether someone has been infected by black magic. So if that is the question, and if a Jyotishi is a true Daivagya, that Jyotishi will just look around him or just observe around him. And suppose the Jyotishi sees a cat running away or a dog barking, then he or she can safely predict that yes, it is a case of black magic. Okay, that is how you use nimittas for Prashna. So there is a separate branch of Prashna which is known as Jamakol Prashnam. It is actually it's a gift of Saint Jinendra from Tamil Nadu. So later on, if everything goes well, maybe we can have a discussion on Jamakol Prashna. Okay. Then we come to muhurta. Okay, so muhurta is a part of studying the Panchanga, where we choose astrologically auspicious beginnings for any endeavor or electional astrology. Okay, so the English name for muhurta is electional astrology. That is the only difference. Then nimitta, interpretation of omens. That means it could be so suppose someone breaks a mirror, he or she can say that this is a bad omen, or someone sneezes while you are going out, people will say that this is a bad omen. So that is how you can interpret nimittas, right? So there will be different rules of interpretation of nimittas, right? So now Jyotish will also have 3 allied non-celestial disciplines. So non-celestial means these are not related to the planets or the stars, right? So one is Sankhya Shastra, which is numerology. Everyone is familiar with that nowadays, right? And people are actually going for horrible name changes by using numerology. Someone is named Sumit, he will add extra 5 U's or extra 5 M's. So this is a very very funny thing to do. But numerology, if you wish to understand real numerology, then there are certain good books. Maybe I can recommend them at the end of the session. Okay, then Samudrika Shastra. This is divination for interpretation of body parts using their shapes, relative size, and markings. So, for example, you must have heard your elders saying that the females should have if you are suppose someone is going for bride hunting, then traditionally, if it's an arranged marriage, then even a few elders will accompany the prospective groom to the prospective bride's house, and they will observe the way of walking, the way of talking of the bride. It also happens with suppose a male has a very big gap between the toe and the first finger of the leg, then it is said that the male will be very, very egoistic and things like that. So that is Samudrika Shastra. Okay. So these are special fields that you actually can go and learn under a qualified guru. And finally, we come to Hasta Samudrika Shastra, which is palmistry, of course. So there are lots of palmists in India, good palmists as well as palmists who are frauds. So of course, these things they have to be, if you want to understand or if you want to learn, it is highly recommended that you go under a qualified guru to learn. Okay. So, okay, Sandeep ji has asked, what is the meaning of divination? Divination means you're using your knowledge to interpret what the situation is telling you. That is the meaning of divination. Okay. So right now in Samudrika Shastra, you're using a body part to interpret how the female or how the male will be. That is divination. Okay. Okay, so there are different types of Jyotish again, right? So Jyotish is not limited to Parashara Jyotish that we'll be discussing. Jyotish, there are different types of Jyotish. There is Nadi Jyotish, there is Parashari Jyotish, there is Gemini Jyotish, there is Tantric Jyotish, and there is Tajika Jyotish. We'll just have a look at each of these, these different styles, right? All right, so Nadi Jyotish, no one knows the origins. Okay, so Nadi Jyotish, what happens is, now if you go to a Nadi astrologer, I don't know if anyone has had the opportunity of visiting a Nadi astrologer, but Nadi astrologers will always ask for your fingerprints. Then they will try to match your fingerprints with the scrolls that they have. Okay, the scrolls are said to be hundreds and thousands of years old, and the destinies of each scrolls, they'll try to match each scroll with you, with your name, and then they will try to interpret those scrolls. Okay. So Nadi remnants are identified by the purported authors. Among the best known are the Bhrigunadi, Parashara Nadi, Shuka Nadi, and Chandrakala Nadi. So these are the different variations of the scrolls that are available with a Nadi astrologer. Now a Nadi astrologer will not tell you which variant he is using, but the most popular are the Bhrigunadi and the Chandrakala Nadi. It's also known as Chandra Nadi. Okay. Now the problem with Nadi astrology is that if your fingerprint matches a scroll, then they can actually predict your past very accurately. Okay, they can predict your past very accurately, but they will not be able to predict your future. Okay, so this is the biggest drawback of Nadi astrology or Nadi Jyotish, right? So maybe you can go for an if you want a taste of it, you can go to Tamil Nadu and get a taste of it. But nowadays, what is happening is that the proponents of Nadi Jyotish, they are either very, very old, or most of them have left this mortal plane. So there are very, very few Nadi Jyotishis left. Okay, so if you are going to a Nadi Jyotish, you have to ensure that the Nadi Jyotish belongs to a particular tradition or has been practicing Nadi Jyotish for a long, long time. Okay. Then we come to Parashari Jyotish. So this is known as the big daddy of all branches of astrology. Okay, this is also from where astrology was derived by Ptolemy, right? So it refers to the tradition of Parashara based on his great work Brihat Parashara Horashastra. Okay, so Parashara, in my opinion, okay, this is a very personal opinion. I don't expect any of you to subscribe to this opinion, but in my opinion, Parashara was not a single person. It actually represents a system of Jyotishis. We are trying to decipher the destinies of people. Okay, so the great work of Parashara is titled Brihat Parashara Horasastra. It is actually titled as BPHS. So in our future discussions, we will be referring to Brihat Parashara Horasastra as BPHS. Okay. So in its current form, why I've written this in its current form? Because no one knows whether the version of BPHS that is in use is actually authentic. Okay, so the current form is actually published by Motidas Banarsidas. So the current form of this treatise contains in its 97 chapters a total of over 2000 verses dealing with natal astrology. Okay, so this is something which is the current form of BPHS. No one knows whether it is authentic or not, but this is the best we have, and all principles of Parashari Jyotish are derived from the BPHS. Okay. So if you're learning astrology, it is recommended that you decode all the 2000 verses of BPHS and then try to find out the meaning. And this is not possible in one lifetime. Trust me on this. Okay. So there are other classical Jyotish texts that will form a part of the Parashara system. Number one is Saravali. Number two is Jataka Parijata. Number three is Phaladipika. And number four is Uttara Kalamrita, which is actually said to be authored by Kalidas. Now, this is not the same Kalidas who is very popular in Bengal. This is a different Kalidas. The author of Uttara Kalamrita is actually called by the name of Kalidas, but this is not the same Kalidas of Bengal. Okay, you must know this. So these are the different other Jyotish texts that form a part of the system, right? And even Prashna Marga, the book which is written by a renowned Keralite Brahmin, even Prashna Marga is a part of the Parashara system. Okay. All right. So one of the most famous Jyotishis who contributed to this system is Mihira. His actual name was Mihira, but Mihira had actually predicted he had very famously predicted the death of an emperor who also belonged to the same age as Chandragupta II. So Chandragupta, because of his accuracy of predictions, he gave him the title of Varaha Mihira. So Varaha is, as we know, is an avatar of Vishnu. So Mihira actually became Varaha Mihira, and that title was given by Emperor Chandragupta II. Okay. So Varaha Mihira has two famous works to his credit. Number one is Brihad Jataka. So this is a book which deals with birth or natal astrology, and then Brihad Samhita, which is chiefly concerned with various forms of divination. So Brihad Samhita will also contain information on numerology. It will also contain information on palmistry. It will also contain information on Samudrik Shastra. That means using different body parts for divination, as I had mentioned earlier. Okay. So both these books, they are in print, right? If you want to go for, if you want to just look at them for reference, you can go to Google Books and then search for them. Okay, the Brihad Jataka Varahamihira, the Brihad Samhita Varahamihira. All right, so next we come to Jaimini Jyotish, right? So Jaimini is regarded, Maharishi Jaimini is regarded by many as the grandson of Maharishi Parashara. So Maharishi Jaimini, what he does is that he writes certain astrological advices. They are known as Upadesha because they are advices, so they are known as Upadesha Sutras. So the Upadesha Sutras of Jaimini forms the foundation of the system. Okay, so this is basically an extension. Okay, this is basically an extension of the principles that have been laid down in the BPHS. But if you do a deep study of Jaimini Jyotish, it can also be used as an independent system of interpretation. Okay, that means both of them, both Parashara and Jaimini, can be used as complementary to each other. But if you're not using them as a complementary system, then you can use them separately. Okay. So for example, if BPHS is like your master in science, then Jaimini is like your PhD that you are doing. Okay, so it's an extension of Parashara Jyotish, right? And if someone is willing to learn, Jaimini Jyotish, then he or she is highly advised to follow the works of Mark Boni as well as Shruti and Yajur. Okay. Next we come to Tantric Jyotish. Okay, so Tantric Jyotish is amalgamation of Tantra and Jyotish. Okay, you are using Jyotish to find out the different aspects of your birth chart, and you are using Tantric remedies for the same to remedify your chart. Okay, so Tantric Jyotish tends to rely on internally derived information over that collected from external sources, arriving at surprisingly correct conclusions via magical techniques. So here the word magic means occult. Okay, so by using certain occult techniques, you can actually learn more, or you can get a lot of information about the client who has come to you for consultation. Okay, so one very famous Tantric Jyotish goes by the name of Chitrabhanu Kodwal. Okay, he is from Kerala. So as a means of divination, he has a pendulum, right? He has a pendulum, and basically he answers your questions by using that pendulum. Okay. So what are the techniques? The observation and interpretation of women. That means you're using the Mitta. The observation and analysis of the Jyotishis, breathing patterns at the moment the question is asked. So just when the client asks you a question, and suppose you are breathing very heavily or you are breathing very slowly, you can also come to certain interpretations based on your breathing patterns. The interpretation of a client's speech patterns and actions. Suppose some client is coming wearing black clothes, right? Then the Jyotishi will easily interpret that the client is under the influence of Saturn. Okay. Suppose some client is coming and has come with after applying a lot of red lipstick, then the Jyotishi will interpret that the problem is being caused by Mars. Okay, so the encouraging of spontaneous or forced visions. So sometimes you will find Jyotishis who have an ability to go into a trance state and have visions. Okay, so three visions, as we know, they are available. One is clairvoyance. Okay, clairvoyance is how you see things. Clairaudience is how you hear things, and there is another vision which is known as cognizant. Okay, cognizant. Most people have heard the word of cognizant as an IT company, but actually cognizant means you are feeling things. Okay, or astral travel. That means you are using your body to travel to different parts of the universe. Okay, so we are continuing the techniques of Tantric Jyotish. So other techniques include the use of information received from ethereal beings. So in most cases, you will see that a Tantric Jyotishi will have a certain spirit that helps them to come to a conclusion regarding the issues of the client. Okay, that spirit in most parts of India, it is known as a Pichacha. Okay, it is known as a Pichacha. Now, Pichachas are actually considered to be evil, to be bad, but that is not the case in some cases. A Pichacha can be a very friendly Pichacha who is helping the Jyotishi to learn more about the client. Right. Then the use of substances or techniques to induce paranormal or psychic phenomena as the charming of objects or people, past life readings, miraculous cures, and the granting of boons. So if you look at the use of substances, then a very famous substance which was made famous by, a substance which was made famous by Ramdas or during the hippie movement of the 1970s, during the foundation of the ISKCON movement, is LSD. Okay, maybe you can try to find out more about what LSD is and things like that. And then the use of Indian spiritual practices to bring the powers of nature under one's direct and personal control. So it is said in the Vedas, it is said in the Bible, it is said in the Quran that human beings have absolute power over the 5 elements of nature. This is an irrefutable fact. Okay, if you're engaging in spiritual practices, you can actually bring rain under your control. You can actually modify the wind direction, or you can modify the wind strength according to your liking. This is a very common phenomenon that happens once you are deep into spirituality. You can easily harness nature's powers, and if you want to experience this, then I would strongly advise any of you to start reading the Sri Rudram at a consistent basis, day-to-day consistent basis, and you will see how that Sri Rudram will ensure, after reading for say a minimum of 40 days, every time you read the Sri Rudram, there will be rain at wherever you're sitting. Okay, even if it is there for 5 minutes, but rain will be there. So this is my experience with the Sri Rudram, but this can be everyone's experience if one tries to do it. All right. Okay, so now we come to the core of Jyotish, right? So Graha, the spelling looks a bit strange. Graha. This is the pronunciation. Graha. It's not Graha. Okay, if I put GRAH, it becomes Graha. It's not Graha. It's Graha. Okay. So a Graha is an entity that holds, grasps, or possesses. This is the meaning of Graha. Graha does not only mean a planet. It also means an entity that holds, grasps, or possesses. But what does it hold? What does it grasp? What does it possess? It possesses or it holds your consciousness. Okay, so it is derived from the word Grahan, which means, of course, it is very familiar. It means to eclipse. Now, there are 7 visible Grahas in Jyotish: Surya, Chandra, Mangala, Buddha, Guru, or Brahaspati, Shukra, and Shani. Now, why I'm not using the English words, because if you use the Sanskrit word for Grahas, this itself can be a great remedy for the planets. Okay, whenever you are trying to refer to the planets or the Grahas, always use Sanskrit words as much as possible. Similarly, you should also use Sanskrit words for the signs. You should also use Sanskrit words for the bhavas. Okay, there are different Sanskrit words for the different bhavas. So we'll come to that. So Surya means the sun, Chandra means the moon, Mangala means Mars, Buddha means Mercury, Guru or Brahaspati. Sorry. Guru or Brahaspati, it means Jupiter, Shukra is Venus, and Shani, of course, is Saturn. Okay. So apart from these 7 Grahas, we also have 2 nodes of the moon. Okay, every 7 Graha will have a node. Surya will have 2 nodes, Chandra will have 2 nodes, Mangala will have 2 nodes, Buddha will have 2 nodes. So every Graha will have 2 nodes. So this is a very basic thing that most astrologers will not tell you. We are only concerned about the nodes. But the nodes of what? The nodes of the moon. That is the reason Rahu and Ketu, they are known as the lunar nodes. Okay. So suppose maybe in one point of time, if we have the nodes of the sun, then they will be known as solar nodes, right? Okay. So if you have nodes of the Mercury, they will be known as mercurial nodes, right? So that is the reason I've written, in reality, each of the 7 visible Grahas will have 2 nodes. Okay. But in Jyotish, we are interested only with Rahu, which is the north node, and Ketu, which is the south node. Now, there are 2 theories. Okay, so this is the geocentric theory. The first diagram that you see, this is the geocentric theory, which considers the Earth as the central point of reference and the entire solar system being revolving around the Earth. And then the usual model of the solar system that we know is the heliocentric theory. Okay, so this is the model that we have studied in school. Okay, but in Jyotish, we are focused with the geocentric theory. Right, we are focused with the geocentric theory that considers the Earth to be the center of the central point of reference, and all the sun, the moon, the planets, and the stars revolving around the Earth. Okay, that is the reason in astrology we consider the sun to be a planet, right, and not the center of the solar system. Now, look at the formation of Rahu and Ketu. Okay, we are only concerned about, we only call them as nodes. Okay, but look how Rahu and Ketu are forming. So the Earth, we consider the Earth as the, as the center of the universe. So if the Earth is considered the central point of reference, the Sun is causing a shadow of the Earth, as shown in the diagram. So just like the, if we the, because the Sun is said to be revolving around the Earth in the geocentric system, the Sun will have an orbit. Okay. Similarly, the Moon is also revolving around the Earth in the geocentric theory. The Moon will also have an orbit. So the northern point where the Sun's orbit and the Moon's orbit intersect, that northern point becomes the north lunar node, or the northern node, which is known as Rahu. And the southern lunar point, and the southern point where the lunar orbit and the solar orbit intersect, that is known as Ketu. Okay, so this is how it works. This is how it has been working. So this is the formation of Rahu and Ketu, right? We all have heard about Rahu and Ketu, but no one talks about the astronomical basis of their formation. Okay. So Graha cabinet, Surya is the king. I have mentioned this in the mythological tale that we have discussed. Chandra is the queen. Mangala is the commander. Buddha is the minister. That is the reason you see a minister will always be very close to the king, right? Buddha is the minister. Guru and Shukra, they are advisors. Okay. Shani is the servant, and Rahu and Ketu, they are the outer and inner soldiers under Mangala. Okay, because Mangala is the commander, so he needs to have soldiers, and those soldiers are represented by Rahu and Ketu. Okay, I'll go into details in a while. Now there are certain Graha terminologies that you must know. Okay, when we do the class on the Panchanga, these terminologies will be very, very important. So a Graha can be benefic or can be malefic. It can have a benefic nature. That means it has the nature of doing good, or malefic, it has the nature of causing harm. Okay, so then there would be UT or yoga or association. So this happens when two or more grahas, they are together in a particular sign or in a particular house. It is known as UT or yoga. Okay, so two friendly planets can be together, two two enemy planets can be together, and different UTs will have different different results to follow. Then we have avasthas. We have the Bala Avastha, we have the Kumara Avastha, the Yuva Avastha, the Vridha Avastha, and the Mrita Avastha. So if a Graha is between 0 to 5 degrees, it is Bala. Between 5 and 15, it is Kumara. That means youth. Between 15 to 25, it's Yuva. Then Vridha and Mrita. Okay, so these will have different implications on the chart. For example, it is said that if a Graha is in the Bala Avastha or in the Mrita Avastha, such a Graha is not able to give 100% of its results. But of course, that will depend on the strength and other factors, which takes me to the next point, which is known as Bala. Okay, so Shadbala is the overall strength of the planet. Okay, most of the jyotish apps or softwares that you use will calculate Shadbala for you, so that is a good thing. But Shadbala ideally should be calculated by hand. Then comes Digbala. Digbala are certain points or certain houses where the Graha obtains maximum, where the Graha obtains directional strength. Okay, directional strength. Digbala means directional strength, and Dikshunya means loss of direction. Right. For example, Jupiter obtains Digbala in the first house, and Dikshunya will always happen in the seventh house from that house. Okay, so if Jupiter goes into the first house, it is known as Digbala or Digbali, and if Jupiter is going to the seventh house, it is known as Dikshunya. Okay, then what makes Vedic astrology unique is the drishti or the aspect factor. Okay, so in Vedic astrology, not only the grahas will have drishti, even the signs. Okay, even the signs like the zodiac signs will also have aspects. So I'll come to that as well. So now all grahas will have seventh aspect from themselves. So this is very natural, right? All the grahas will stare directly at something that is forward to them, right? This also happens with us. So if you are sitting somewhere, if you're sitting in a restaurant, you can directly see the person who is sitting opposite to you. And the grahas will also behave in the same way, because we consider the grahas to be entities with consciousness. Okay, we consider the grahas to be entities with consciousness. So we consider the grahas to be entities with consciousness, and as a result, just like human beings, if they are sitting at a certain place, they can see the person sitting opposite to them directly. So all the grahas, all the 8 grahas, or in some traditions, all the 9 grahas will have the 7th aspect from themselves. Okay, so the 7th aspect is considered to be a full aspect, right? The 7th aspect is considered to be the full aspect, but then the grahas will also have some special aspects. So the inner grahas. So what are the inner grahas? Just a minute. Okay, Shubhra is asking, is this class will be in 2 parts? No, ma'am, we will be wrapping up by 10. It was already said that it will be in a single part. Just wrap up by 10. Just hold on for a bit. Okay, we're just ending up. Okay, so the inner grahas or all the grahas will have the 7th aspect. The inner grahas are Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus. These are the inner grahas. And then we have the outer grahas. Okay, the outer grahas are Mars, Brahaspati, Shani, Rahu, and Ketu. Okay, so these are the outer grahas. So the outer grahas will have special aspects. Why? Because the legend says that the outer grahas will be above the earth, and the inner grahas in the geocentric theory, the inner grahas will be in the same in the same variation as the earth. Okay, so the outer grahas will have special aspects. So Mangala will have the 4th. Okay, how to differentiate between outer and inner grahas? As I said, the outer grahas will be Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus. And the inner grahas will be Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus, and the outer grahas will be Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu. So that is the differentiation. There is no other differentiation. Okay, just know about this. So now look at the outer grahas that are having the special aspects. Mangala will have 4th, 7th, and 8th. Shani will have 3rd, 7th, and 10th. Guru will have 5th, 7th, and 9th. Rahu will have 5th, 7th, and 9th. Some traditions believe it has 3rd, 7th, and 11th. Okay, so it will vary according to traditions. Okay, it will vary according to traditions. Now Ketu, according to me, it will not have aspects. Okay, Ketu. No, we do not consider Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto in the Vedic system. Okay, there are certain books that will mention that we do consider, but because we are taking the Brahat Parasara Horasastra as our reference point, it does not have any information on Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I'll tell you why. So according to me, Ketu will not have any aspects. Why? Because Ketu is the moksha karaka. Okay, I'll deal with this in more details during the Panchanga class. But the only aim of Ketu is moksha. So moksha means leaving everything behind, and aspect means desire. Okay, so if a graha wants you to leave everything behind, it cannot have any special desire. Now Shani has a desire. Okay, Shani has a desire. Mangala has a desire. All these aspects of the grahas, even the 7th aspect of graha is a desire. Okay, all the aspects, the 4th aspect, or the 3rd aspect, or the 8th aspect, or the 10th aspect, all these aspects are desires. Okay, now because Ketu is a moksha karaka, it does not have any desires. And if you look at the iconography of Ketu, it is headless. So you can aspect or you can see only if you have a head, if you have eyes. If you do not have eyes, how do you see? You cannot see, right? So I believe, in my personal opinion or in my personal experience, Ketu does not have aspects. But yes, some some traditions will consider Ketu to have the same aspect of Rahu. Okay, so you express in one comment that Ketu in 12th house is going to bring moksha. How true is that? No, it is Ketu in 12th house brings moksha only when it is in 12th house in all the divisional charts. So it's not that only being in the Rashi chart or in the Lagna chart will bring moksha. No, Ketu has a major role to play in the divisional charts, and also the moksha aspect of Ketu is seen in the Navamsha. Okay. Okay, so what are the houses that stand for? I'll come to that now. Okay. All right. Now these different aspects will have different meanings. So the 4th aspect of Mangala means protection. Okay, Chaturashraya. It is known as Chaturashraya. So suppose Mangala is in the 7th house. So from the 7th count, 4 places from 7, 7, 8, you'll count that house also. Okay, you'll count that natal position of Mangala also. So suppose I'm just giving you an example. Suppose Mangala is in the 7th house. So 4 places from 7, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Mangala will always protect the 10th house. Okay, Mangala will always protect the 10th house. That means what? That means Mangala is protecting your work. 10th house is your work. Your work, you will not, you will not be fired from your work. You will not lose your work. So that is a good thing Mangala is doing. The dangerous aspect of Mangala is the 8th aspect. This is a destructive aspect of Mangala. Just like the 4th is the protective aspect, 8 is the destructive aspect. So count 7, 8 places from 7. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. So the Mangala is looking at the 2nd house. That means 2nd house is the house of family. 2nd house is the house of speech. 2nd house is the house of wealth. So that means Mangala has a capacity of making you a very, very capacity of giving you a very sharp tongue, which can actually destroy your family, which can actually destroy your wealth. So this is how it works. Okay. So what if Mangal is in 4th house? Does it protect the 7th house? Or as a Mangal dosh, as it is in 4th house, will it destroy? No, you have to, for Mangal dosh, you have to look at why the Mangal dosha is coming. The Mangal dosha comes in because of the destructive aspect. Okay, everyone has heard about Mangal dosha, but the Mangal dosha comes because of the 8th aspect of Mangala. Okay, so let's look at what example has been given. So Mangala is in the 4th house. So the 4th aspect is 4, 5, 6, 7. Of course, it is protecting. Now look at the 8th aspect. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So what it is doing? It is the 8th aspect of Mangala is in the house, the 11th house. What is the 11th house? 11th house is the gain from your marriage. Okay, so it is a big possibility that after marrying, all of a sudden you can become bankrupt. All of a sudden your gains can stop. All of a sudden you may lose your job. That is why Mangal in the 4th house is said to give Mangal dosha. Okay, hope I'm clear in this. Right, now see the aspects of Shani. Shani, the 3rd aspect of Shani is the most difficult aspect. Okay, the 4th aspect of Shani is the 3rd aspect of Shani is the most difficult aspect. So wherever the 3rd aspect of Shani is facing, you have to work twice as hard in that house to gain from that house. Okay, so suppose Shani is in the 1st house, and that is the reason 1st house Shani is so difficult. Shani is in the 1st house. What happens? 1st, 2nd, 3rd. 3rd is your courage. Okay, 3rd is your courage. The person will have very less courage. The person has to find courage from somewhere. 3rd is your skills. The person will find it very difficult to learn new skills. Right? The person will find very difficult to drive. So that is the 3rd aspect of Shani. So suppose Shani is in the 12th house. What happens? From the 12th, the 3rd aspect is 12, 1, 2. That means the person will have to earn his own wealth. Okay, the person will not get anything in, will not inherit anything, or will, even if he inherits, it will be a very difficult inheritance. The 7th aspect of Shani, of course, Shani creates obstacles. So obstacles will be found on the 7th aspect of Shani. 10th aspect of Shani is your biggest failure. Okay, 10th aspect of Shani is your biggest failure. That means where you fail, right? That represents your failure, and it is advised that you must forget the 10th house from Saturn. For example, Saturn in the 12th house. Okay, Saturn in the 12th house. The 10th aspect is 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So Saturn is looking at the 9th house from the 12th house, right? From the 12th house, the 10th aspect of Shani is in the 9th house. That means 9th house is what? 9th house is the house of Guru. 9th house is the house of father. 9th house is also your luck. So this means luck will never favor the person. Okay, the person must be prepared to do a thing twice to get success. The person may never have a good relationship with the father. The person may never find a guru. So this is what the 10th aspect of Shani does. It represents your biggest failure. Okay. Then comes the guru aspects of guru. The 5th aspect of guru is is the blessings of guru. Okay. The 5th aspect is the blessing. The 7th aspect, of course, is abundance, because guru is the karaka for abundance. And then the 9th aspect is the aspect of transformation. So out of Mangala, Shani, and Guru, in my personal experience, the 9th aspect of Guru is the most difficult. Okay, 3rd aspect of Shani is difficult, of course, but 9th aspect of Shani, 9th aspect of Guru is extremely difficult, right? So wherever the 9th aspect of Guru falls, if there is no planet, you can consider yourself lucky. But if there is a planet and that planet is malefic, then you will have a lot of hard work to do. Okay. Rahu, the aspects of Rahu will signify the desires. Okay. Fifth aspect of Rahu, the desire to learn. Seventh aspect of Rahu, the desire to consume. Ninth aspect of Rahu, the desire to hoard things, because Rahu only has a head. If you look at the iconography of Rahu, Rahu only has a head. He does not have a body. So Rahu only wants to. He is a greedy. He is a mahabhogi. Okay, he is a mahabhogi. If you give a drain to Rahu, Rahu will try to find out how to, how to hoard that drain and profit from it. Okay, so the ninth aspect of Rahu represents the hoarding ability. Third, seventh, and 11th, that varies according to tradition. As I said, Ketu does not have aspects, right? All right. Now there are certain Graha terminologies that you must know. Number one is exaltation. So exaltation is the sign of highest happiness. Okay, exaltation is the sign of highest happiness, where the Graha is most happy. Then debilitation. Okay, seventh aspect of Rahu is the desire. No, is the desire to consume. Okay, it wants more and more from that also. Okay. Then we come to Graha terminology. The Graha terminology is number one. We come to exaltation. As I said, exaltation is the state of highest happiness. Okay, I'll come to the table where I list down the exaltation and debilitation of the Grahas. Debilitation is the place where the Graha feels the most unhappy or the most uncomfortable. That is the fall from grace. But what fall? The fall of values. Okay, so if a Graha is debilitated, suppose some Graha is debilitated, then what happens is that we will lose the value associated with that Graha. For example, Saturn debilitates in Aries. Okay, so in that case, the person will always try to skip responsibility. The person will always be indisciplined. The person can also be a thief, because the lower value of Saturn is a thief. Okay, just like Saturn represents punishment, but Saturn is also a thief. Saturn is also a cheater. So if a Graha is debilitating, then it can represent fall from values. For example, Sun in Libra, Sun debilitates in Libra. Okay, Sun debilitates in Libra. What happens? The person will never be able to be on time, because Sun represents time. So the person will be a forever late latif. That is the word that we use for a late comer, late latif. So that person will be forever late in coming and going somewhere. Then we come to retrogression. Retrogression means a Graha is moving backwards. Okay, you can just imagine yourself sitting in a car, and you have put the steering wheel on reverse mode, and you are traveling in that reverse mode. That is retrogression. That means the Graha is moving backwards related to the Earth. Okay, so Surya and Chandra will never be retrograde. Yeah, what about Jupiter debilation in Capricorn? I'll come to it. So Surya and Chandra will never retrograde. Rahu and Ketu will always retrograde. Okay, Surya and Chandra will never retrograde. Rahu and Ketu will always be retrograde. And other Grahas will retrograde when they are 140 degrees apart away from the Sun. And retrograde planets in a horoscope means you have a lot of pending karma related to that Graha. For example, Saturn is retrograde. You have a lot of pending karma with regards to servants. You have a lot of pending karma with regard to work. Mars is retrograde. You have a lot of pending karma with regard to courage. That means in your last life you were not courageous. Now you will get opportunities where you have to show your courage and fulfill that desire. Okay, retrogression, as I said, it means the Graha is moving backwards. Okay, all the Grahas, they move in anti-clockwise direction, right? Retrograde Grahas, except Rahu and Ketu, retrograde Grahas will not move in clockwise direction. But as I said, you can imagine yourself sitting in a car and then pressing the reverse button. The car is going reverse. That means all the things that you are seeing around you are also going in reverse. That is retrogression. Okay, so as I said, the Sun and Moon will never retrograde. Rahu and Ketu will always be retrograde, and other planets will be retrograde depending upon their position from the Sun. So the further a position a planet will be away from the Sun, the further will be its retrogression motion. And retrogression will also indicate a lot of headstrong attitude. Okay, so if you have a lot of retrograde Grahas in the chart, that means you will be very, very headstrong. Okay, you will not like to listen to the opinion of others. If you have decided on something, you will accomplish that no matter what, right? And if you have decided on someone, that retrograde Graha will always try to find out ways and means for you to achieve your objective. For example, suppose you have a guru retrograde. Okay, you have a guru retrograde. What will happen is you have a lot of karma related to spirituality, you have a lot of karma related to, if you are a female, you have a lot of karma related to your husband. If you're a male, you have a lot of karma related to your father or guru. If you also have a lot of karma related to wealth, because guru is the primary karaka for wealth. Okay, so retrogression, as I said, it also means a headstrong attitude, and it also means a crooked approach to things. For example, suppose the second lord of a person is retrograde. Okay, the second lord of a person is retrograde. It means that person will never earn wealth in a conventional manner. Okay, that person will never earn wealth in a conventional manner. Right. Then we come to combustion. Combustion means when a graha is very, very close to the sun, within 9 to 7 degrees. There are different degrees for combustion. That is known as combustion. It is actually known as the Asht Avastha. Asht means the planet is almost dead. Okay, the planet is almost dead and it has lost all its power. But that is not how combustion works. Okay, maybe what you can, as a general rule, you can say that the combust planet will lose its ability to confer its blessings on the native. For example, if the seventh lord is combust, suppose the seventh lord is very, very combust, then it means that the native will have to strive very, very hard to get married, to find a partner. The fifth lord is combust. Mantras will not work for the native. The ninth lord is combust. Luck will not favor the native. That is what combustion means. Okay, so you have to do some external remedies to get that combust planet out of the, to get that combust planet to bless you. And the remedy for combust planets is to worship the sun. Okay. No, moon is never combust. Okay, moon is never combust. Moon will never be combust because sun cannot combust a moon, because in the planetary cabinet, the sun and moon are very close to each other. Amavasya moon, yes, maybe there would be problems. There would be problems to the parents after birth. There could be issues with poverty. There could be issues with wealth creation, and also if in a good side, if a person is born on Amavasya, or if a person is born one day before Amavasya or one day after Amavasya, or if sun and moon are together, or even in the same sign or aspecting each other, then what will happen is this person will always take the opinion of the spouse in doing things. Okay? That is the meaning of sun and moon together. And then comes Maran Karan Sthan placement. So this is the place where the planet will find death-like pain. Okay, this is the place where the planet will find death-like pain. Right? Now then. Now look at the planetary rulers and the constellations they rule. Now pay attention to this. I'll just explain a bit about the signs, about their significations. Okay, I'll explain a bit about the planets, and then we can look at it. Okay, so Surya represents the father. Surya represents the light of your soul. Surya represents your discipline. Surya also represents your resources. Surya also represents, it represents knowledge. The highest knowledge is found from the sun. As we know, if someone has read the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna told Arjuna that the Bhagavad Gita was first heard by Surya Narayan. That is the reason Surya represents knowledge. So Surya has Agni Tattva, and it rules the constellation of Simha. So what is Simha? Simha is a very territorial constellation. Okay, if you look at the animals that are associated with each of the signs, you'll understand this. Okay, I'll come to this in details, right? As we go through the signs. Then comes Chandra. Chandra rules your mind. Chandra is representative of the mother. Okay, Chandra rules your emotions. If Chandra is afflicted, then life will always be an emotional roller coaster for you, right? And all because Chandra rules emotions, so Chandra has Jala Tattva. Okay, the constellation that Chandra rules is Karka or Cancer. Okay, I've just written the names in Sanskrit. Then we come Mangala. Mangala is your courage. Okay, Mangala is your initiative. Mangala is your strength. Mangala is your fighting ability. Mangala is your desire to go after your goals. Right? So Mangala has Agni Tattva. It rules Mesha or Aries. Then comes Ketu. So it is said that Ketu behaves like Mangala. Okay, Why it is said that? Because it has the same Agni Tattva. Okay, there is a saying, Puja vat Ketu Shani vat Rahu. It means Ketu will behave like Mangala. The other name for Mangala in Jyotish or in Vedic astrology is Puja. Okay, so Puja vat Ketu Rahu. Yes, Puja vat Ketu Shani vat Rahu. Okay, that is the phrase. Then Ketu is given the partial rulership of Scorpio or Vrishtik, but Mangala is the primary ruler. Okay. Then we come to Buddha. So Buddha is your intelligence. Buddha is your intellectual ability. Buddha is the strength of your intellect. Buddha is the thinking mind, the quality of your thoughts. So your Chandra may be completely destroyed, but if your Buddha is afflicted, then that person will have a very difficult time in adjusting in this world. Okay. There is a very good astrologer I know, Ryan Kurzak. He says that if your Buddha is okay and if all the other planets are bad, you can still survive in this world. But if your Buddha is bad and all the other planets are good, then you'll have a lot of hard work. Okay. Okay, so why Ketu is behaving like Mars? Does Ketu have similar aspect to Mars? No. Ketu is behaving like Mars because Ketu is given the partial rulership of Scorpio, whose primary rulership is with Mars. Okay, and Ketu also represents Agni Tattva, right? So if there is a conjunction of Mars and Ketu in the horoscope, what happens is there would be an excess of fire. The person would be very, very angry. The person would be very, very short-tempered, right? Then comes Buddha. As I said, Buddha rules Mithun. Okay, Mithun is the place where sexual encounters take place. As I said, restaurants, gyms, theaters, movie theaters, right? This is the house of communication. And Kanya, I'll come to these sides. Okay, then comes Guru or Brahaspati. So this is your inner wisdom. This is your Guru that functions inside of you. Okay, this is the Guru that functions inside of you, which is known as Upaguru, right? Guru also represents your abundance factor. Guru also represents your wealth. Okay, now there was a question which someone had put, why Guru debilitates in Capricorn? Because Capricorn is a very scary sign. It is a marshy land, right? Filled with crocodiles. Okay, the primary animal for Capricorn is a crocodile, Makara. Okay, so Guru is the elephant, right? Everyone, I don't know how many of you are familiar, but there is a very famous picture where an elephant is holding up a lotus and Vishnu is trying to save that elephant, and one leg of the elephant is caught by the crocodile. So that represents the situation of Guru and Capricorn. Okay. So Guru is it's a very gentle planet. It is regarded as the most Soumya or the most gentle of all the grahas. And you look at the element of Guru, it is Akasha. This is the element that keeps things together. Okay. We have 5 elements, right? Agni, Jal, Prithvi, Vayu, and Akash. So Akasha is the element where all the other elements make their play. Okay, Agni, Jal, Prithvi, and Vayu, they are playing over that Akash element. So Akash is the base. If Akash is not okay with in your chart, if the Guru is not okay in your chart, everything will keep on collapsing, right? Akash is responsible for your balance factor. Okay, Guru is responsible for your balance. So if Guru is afflicted in any way, your life will be completely out of balance. Okay, this is the most common affliction of Guru. If your life is not balanced, it means Guru is afflicted. Then comes Shukra. So Shukra actually comes from the word Sukha. Okay, it comes from the word Sukha, and Shukra is white in color. That white comes from the word semen. Okay, that the color of white, the color of Shukra actually comes from the color of semen, right? So Shukra is the Karaka for relationships. Okay, Shukra is the Karaka for relationships. And the primary aim of Shukra is to get people married and to populate the planet. Now, I don't know why it happens, but this is what the BPHS said. BPHS says, okay, the primary agenda of Shukla is to make people married and then populate the planet. Okay, this is the primary agenda. And because Shukra represents semen, so it is Jala, right? It is the quality of your relationships. If Shukra is good in your chart, relationships will be good. If Shukra is afflicted, relationships will find very difficult to handle relationships. Okay, Shukra rules Vrisabha or Taurus and Tula or Libra, right? Then we come to Shani. Of course, this is the most feared planet in Vedic astrology, and rightly so, because it's a very cruel planet. It is but although it is the most cruel, it is not the most malefic. I'll tell you why. Okay, I'll tell you why. So Shani, it represents sorrow. It is the Karaka of Dukkha. Okay, So Shani, wherever it sits, it will give you dukkha. The aspects of Shani will give you dukkha, right? And Guru and Shani, they will control over 70% of your horoscope. Okay, so the karaka for the karaka for sukha or happiness is Shukra, and the karaka for dukkha is Shani. But there is a paradoxical, they have a paradoxical relationship. Shani and Shukra, they are regarded to be the very best of friends. But every time there is a dasha of Shukra and Shani together. For example, if there is a Shukra Mahadasha and Shani Antardasha, or if there is a Shani Mahadasha and Shukra Antardasha, life will go for a spin. Okay, I know one person here whose friend is going through that. That person will be aware of whom I'm talking. So life will become topsy-turvy in that case. Okay. So why? Because Shani is the karaka for dukkha, Shukra is the karaka for sukha. So there will be a constant push and pull. Okay, there will be a constant push and pull, and this is actually mentioned in in Kala Amrita by Kalidasa, the book which I mentioned previously. If if both of them are coming together in any dasha or antardasha, you can be prepared for life-changing experiences. Shani rules Capricorn, and Rahu, Shanivat Rahu. Rahu is actually like Shani, who rules Vayu. Okay, so Shani represents air, and Rahu represents bad air, filled with viruses, filled with germs, and things like that. So Rahu represents the north node of Moon. So Rahu is the co-ruler of Kumbha, but Shani is the main ruler of Kumbha. Okay, all right. So now let's look at how the Veda Grahas exalt and debilate and the office.
क्या क्या चाहिए है
All right.
दूध देना का किसका बोला कोको नहीं है मेरे पास.
So look at it. Surya, it exalts in Mesha. Okay, why Mesha? Because Mesha represents the kingdom. Okay, Mesha is the first house of the Kalpurush chart. I'll be using the word KPC. KPC means Kalpurush chart. Okay, so Mesha is the first house of Kalpurush chart, and Mesha also represents the kingdom. So the king will always feel very, very comfortable in Mesha. Okay? Debiliates in Libra. Why Libra? Because Libra is the house of sunset. It is the 7th house. It is the natural 7th house in KPC. So Libra is the house of sunset. Just like the sun rises in Misha, the sun sets in Tula. Yeah, someone's mic is on. I think it's essential to mute.
It is Swati's mic.
Yes, Swati, you're just muting.
Swati, please mute yourself.
Please mute yourself. Please.
I think it's muted, right? Okay, so as I said, Tula is the house of the natural sunset, just like the sun rises in the first house. So, Tula is the place where the sun sets. Okay, that is the reason it debilitates there. And Tula is also the house of balance. If you look at the symbolism of Tula, there would be a scale there. Okay, there would be a scale there. That is the house of balance, right? So, if you are if you look at a king can never be fair. Okay, a king will never be fair. He will always be biased. All kings will have their own biases. Okay, no matter how good that or how dharmic that king is, all the kings will have their own biases, right? So that is the point of debilitation of Surya. Then Mula Trikona, this is the office. Okay, so Surya is the office of Surya is Simha. Why? Because if you look at the iconography of Simha, it is a lion, right? And lions are very territorial animals, and the king will not give even 1 inch away, even 1 inch from his territory to others, right? Then comes Chandra. Chandra is Vrisabha. Okay, Chandra is Vrisabha. The exaltation is Vrisabha. Why Vrisabha? Because Vrishabha or Taurus is the house of food and drinks, right? If you are angry or if you are upset, you can see that if you have a nice dish or if you have a good chocolate, you can actually control your mind, right? It is something which is known as emotional eating. The mind gets very, the mind, the mind gets the mind gets very emotional, right? The mind gets very satisfied. Yeah, actually, I'll come to it. The mind gets very satisfied in, whenever you make it, if you're upset or if you're emotionally drained, or if you're emotionally drained, or if you are emotionally upset, you can listen to some good music and you can console yourself. Debilitation is Vrishtik. Why Vrishtik? Because Scorpio or Vrishtika is the house of transformation. Okay, when you are transformed, what happens? Your awareness is suddenly brought to the present moment. If you are filled with a lot of trouble, transformation means what? You are going through a lot of trouble where you have to, here you are forced to change. So when you are forced to change, your awareness will always be in the present moment. As I had explained previously, if your awareness comes to the present moment, the mind dies, isn't it? The mind will die. The mind has nothing to do. The mind has no castles to build. And then Mula Trikona, the meaning of Mula Trikona is office. This is where the planet will start giving its results more consistently. Okay, so I consider Chandra's Mula Trikona to be Karaka, but yes, Ashish has rightly said that most traditions will consider Chandra's Mula Trikona to be Vrishabha. But why I consider to be it as Karaka? Because Karaka or Cancer is the sign of motherly care, motherly love. Because at the end of the day, Chandra signifies mother. Okay, Chandra signifies mother. Chandra is the Karaka for mother, and the mother is always wanting to care. Okay, so wherever the moon is there, right? Wherever the moon is there, the moon is regarded as Ati Shubha. Okay, the moon is regarded as Ati Shubha. Ati Shubha means the most auspicious planet because it is the Karaka of our mind. If you consider the placement of moon as the first house, then you can actually have a very new chart which is known as a Rashi chart. The usual chart analysis that we do, that is the Lagna chart. But if you consider the moon as the first house, you will have the Rashi chart. So if the moon is placed in Karaka, it is the it finds itself at home. Okay. But yes, you can consider it to be Vrishabha also. But when you consider it Vrishabha, then there is another consideration you have to make. You have to consider Chandra as as a partial ruler of Vrishabha. Okay. If you are considering the Mula Trikona of moon as Vrishabha, then you have to consider Chandra as the partial ruler of Vrishabha. Originally, Vrishabha is ruled by Venus, right? Then Mangala. Now this Mangala is a planet that exalts in its enemy sign. Okay, Mangala and Saturn, they are dire enemies. Mangala and Shani, they are dire enemies, right? But Mangala, what he does is that he exalts in Makara. Makara is a sign ruled by Capricorn. Now, why does that happen? It happens because Mangala is a general. He is a commander. So commander feels most comfortable, or he feels the happiest when he barges into enemy territories and gives it back to his enemies. You have seen how happy Hanuman was while destroying Lanka, isn't it? That is, you can relate the image. Okay, he was very happy. His tail was set on fire, and what he did, he just burnt the entire kingdom into ashes. Right. So that is the reason why Mangala exalts in Makara, in an enemy sign. Okay, so Mangala is the only Mangala and Shukra are the only planets that will exalt in enemy signs. Right. Then comes the revelation of Mangala, that is Karka. Karka is a very feminine sign. Karka is the home. So if you take a commander if you put a commander at home instead of in the battlefield, the commander will feel very, very uncomfortable. And the moon trikona, of course, is Mesha. So Mesha is the house of physical activity. Okay, all physical activities take place from Mesha. All risks are taken from Mesha. Okay, if you have a very good Mesha sign, unaffected Mesha, you will be a very good risk taker. Similarly, all mantras come from Mesha because Mesha is the sign where you are absolutely alone. Okay, Mesha is the sign where you are absolutely alone. So all risks come from Mesha. So if your Mesha is afflicted, mantras will not work for you, right? Then comes Buddha. So Buddha exalts in Kanya because Buddha is the thinking mind, and Kanya is the most logical or the most analytical sign, and the thinking mind finds very big comfort in there. So if you look at all the data scientists and all the data analysts out there working with data and day in and day out, they will have a very strong Kanya sign, or they will have a very strong Buddha. Okay. The debilation of Buddha is Meena. Why? Because the analytical mind cannot love. Love and analytics cannot go together. Okay, Meena is the sign of highest love, right? Meena is the sign of highest love. So Meena is the sign of freedom. So the mind does not want freedom. The mind wants to analyze. The mind wants to get stuck in situations. The mind wants to hang on with people. The mind wants to hang on with situations. So when you put Buddha in Meena, of course, it is very, very uncomfortable. And the moon trikona is again Kanya. Okay. Guru, the exaltation is Karaka, right? So why Karaka? Because Guru is the place of God in your chart. That is where the blessings of the divine are coming from. Okay. And that is the reason, because Guru exalts in Karta, Bhakti Marga is regarded to be the best approach towards God. Okay, so the divine does not respond to your mantras, the divine does not respond to your kriyas, the divine will not respond to your karmas, the divine will only respond to your emotions. And this has been proved not only in, it has been said, or this has been said since the last thousands of years in, in Vedic literature, but now it is also being proved in, even in quantum physics, that you can manipulate the field around you, the cosmic field around you, by your emotions. That is the reason why Guru exalts in Karka. Guru deviates in Makara because Makara is a very dry sign. Makara is the sign of the crocodile. Makara is where you feel very, very afraid. Makara is the marshy land. Okay, if you go into a marshy land, you cannot say whether there is a snake or whether there is a crocodile or whether there is an insect that can bite you there. If I make you walk on a marshy land, the first thing that you will feel is fear. Okay, Saturn is fear and Guru is anti-fear. Guru is abundance, right? Guru is no restriction. Saturn is restriction. Guru is abundance. So the first thing that happens to Guru in Makara is fear. The person will always be fearful. Mool Trikon, Dhanu. Why Dhanu? Because Dhanu represents the knowledge about God. Okay, Dhanu represents the knowledge of God. But to reach God, you need the emotions of Cancer. You need the emotions of Karka. Right? Dhanu is the knowledge of God. Dhanu is the knowledge of religion. Right? There will be hundreds and hundreds of pandits who are, who are very familiar with the Vedas. But how many people do you see who have actually acquired God? Very less. Okay. The ones who have acquired God, the spiritual gurus who you see who are 24/7 into God consciousness, they will never speak about the Vedas. They will never speak about the scriptures, because the scriptures will always only help you to a certain point, right? The scriptures will only help you to a certain point. But after that, you have to use your emotions to reach the divine, right? Then comes Shukra. So the exaltation point of Shukra is Meena. So Shukra is the Karaka for relationships. Now all relationships, they need what? They need love. Your wife, your husband, they need your love, right? You cannot, work and love, they don't go together. So Shukra is the highest of freedom. All relationships become good when you give the other party freedom. You can be all relationships become toxic. When do they become toxic? When you are overanalyzing, when you are thinking that your spouse is, maybe your spouse is not being loyal to you, maybe your spouse is having an extramarital affair. That is when you are using your mind in an overdrive. That is the reason Shukra debilitates in Kanya. Without space or without love, all relationships will come to an end. All relationships will be put into ICU, right? So freedom is the greatest gift that you can give to your partner. Freedom is the greatest gift that you can give to your spouse. And with freedom comes trust. And that trust is found only in Meena. Okay, so that is the reason Shukra, who is the Karaka for relationships, who is the Karaka for, who is the Karaka for happiness, exalts in a Jupiterian sign. Okay, happiness comes only when there is freedom. Okay, you can have lots and lots of money, but if you don't give freedom to your partner, if you don't give freedom to your spouse, that spouse will never be happy with you, no matter how much money you are earning or no matter how much comforts you're giving in your house. Okay. The Mool Trikona is Tula. That is where Shukra tries to be a very impartial one. Okay. Tula is the balance thing, right? Tula is the balance. So Shukra in Tula will always be impartial. If you see a person with a Libra moon, or if you see a person with with a Libra lagna, that person will be very, very impartial, right? So that person will be very, very honest. If he or she is finding something bad or something good in you, he or she will be telling this to you straightforward, because they are very impartial. Okay, and that takes me to Shani. Shani exalts in Tula. Why? Because Shani is the balance. Okay, Shani is your balance. You have to know. You need to have that wisdom when you are balancing between work and when you are balancing between love. Okay, that is Shani. But that is one partial reason why Shani exalts in Tula. The other reason why Shani exalts in Tula is because, as I said, Shani is the Karaka for Dukkha. And the highest Dukkha will always come from your relationships. Okay, anyone who has been in a marriage or anyone who is in a relationship will understand that your spouse will be the reason for your highest happiness. But the most extreme form of unhappiness will also come from your spouse, from your relationship. That is the reason Shani exalts in Tula. Okay, Shani debilitates in Mesha. Why? Because Mesha is the first sign of the KPC. Right? Mesha is the first sign of the KPC. So Shani is the Graha which comes last at the planetary cabinet. He is the servant. He does not like to show his face. So when he is asked to behave for him, so when he is asked to fend for himself, when he is asked to show his face, Shani becomes very, very uncomfortable. Shani cannot take quick decisions, as I had mentioned in that mythological story. Shani is the last to know, and Mesha is a sign where quick decisions are very, very essential. Shani does not like mantras. Shani is a renunciate, right? Shani likes to let go of everything, and even mantras is a form of attachment. There will be some people who have let go of everything, but they will still do their mantra. So that is also a form of attachment they are having. That is the reason Sunny devilly sits in Mesha, and Mula Trikona is Kumbha. Why Kumbha? Because Kumbha is the place where Rahu is also Rahu is also owning. So Shani he gives the air, Rahu spreads it. Okay. So Shani and Rahu, they are very, very torturous grahas. Okay. Mangala is not a torturous graha. Mangala is, suppose Mangala is a maraka in a chart and Mangala is assigned to kill the person. Mangala will not torture you indefinitely. Mangala will kill you directly. But Shani and Rahu, they will ensure that you die after doing your stool in the bed, after doing your urination in the bed, and you die after a lot of torture. So Kumbha is actually the graveyard. If you look at, we have a very common saying that Afghanistan is the graveyard of all empires. So similarly, Kumbha is the toilet. Kumbha is the graveyard. Okay. So Kumbha is graveyard is the place where where if a person dies and you go to the graveyard to to cremate him or to bury him, thereafter the dukkha sets in. Thereafter you realize that the person is not coming back to you. So that is where Shani feels the most comfortable. That is his office. That is the reason the Mula Trikona of Shani is Kumbha. Now Rahu, of course, these are traditional differences. Some will say that the exaltation is Kanya. Some will say that the exaltation is Vrishabha. Some will say the exaltation is Mithuna. Why in Kanya? Because Kanya is the natural sixth house, and Rahu likes to apply his mind to deal with enemies. Okay, that is Kanya, the natural sixth house of the zodiac. Why Vrishabha? Because Vrishabha is the sign of Bhoga. Vrishabha is your food and drinks. So Rahu likes to eat and eat. Rahu likes to drink and drink without limitation. That is the reason some traditions believe Rahu exalts in Vrishabha. And then Mithuna. Mithuna is the sign of smooth talking. All the sexual encounters that you see, all the one night stands that you see around yourself, that happen due to a lot of smooth talking. If you cannot indulge in smooth talking, then these encounters would never happen. And Rahu is a smooth talker. Rahu is a cheat. Rahu is a manipulator. All forms of manipulation will happen in Mithuna. So these are the logics that why Rahu exalts in these signs. Similarly, Rahu debilitates in Dhanu. Why Dhanu? Because Rahu is very anti-religion. Okay, Rahu represents the foreign element, right? Rahu is anti-guru. Rahu does not want the guru. Rahu thinks that he is the guru itself. Rahu always tries to imitate Jupiter. So Rahu debilitates in Dhanu. Vrishchik, why? Because Vrishchik is the sign of transformation. Okay, so to keep you in a miserable condition, you cannot transform. Rahu does not want you to transform. Okay, Rahu does not want you to transform. Rahu wants to keep you miserable. So anytime you're trying to transform, suppose you have a lot of weight. Now the doctor has asked you to reduce weight. You are trying to transform yourself. But Rahu will say, no, you should not transform. You should eat more and more because I want more and more. That is the reason Rahu debilitates in Vrishchik according to some tradition. And again, the Mool Trikona is Kanya because of the exaltation, because Rahu, as I said, Rahu is, if you look at the Graha Guna Adhyaya of BPHS, Rahu is the second most courageous planet after Mangala. Okay, understand this. Rahu is the second most courageous planet after Mangala. But what happens is, what Rahu does is that there is a very different, because Mangala and Rahu both are soldiers. Of course, Mangala is a commander, Rahu is a soldier. So suppose Mangala is fighting with people. What will happen is that suppose there are 20 enemies together. Mangala will nose dive into those 20 enemies, thinking that maybe I will be killed, but I'll kill 10 others along with me. Rahu, what he will do, he will call those 20 enemies at a spot and then he will bomb them into oblivion. So that requires an extreme application of the mind, that requires an extreme analysis of interpreting and analyzing every move of your enemy. And that analysis is best done in Kanya. That is the reason Rahu's Mool Trikona is believed to be Kanya. Kumbha, of course, because Rahu is a toilet. Kumbha, yes, like Shakuni. So Kumbha is, as I said, Kumbha is the graveyard. Okay, Kumbha is the graveyard, and Rahu represents smoke. All the smoke that you see in yagyas and havans, all the smoke that comes out, from various funeral activities, from pujas, everything is Rahu. Okay, so Kumbha, it represents the end of all rituals. Okay, Kumbha also represents the end of all rituals. Kumbha, as I said, also represents toilets. That is the reason there is a there is a remedy from Shapta Rishis where Sunil Jaunji says that cleaning toilets on Wednesday evenings is a very good remedy for Rahu. Why? Toilet is Kumbha. Wednesday is represented by Rahu's exaltation sign of Kanya. Okay, that is the basic premise, the remedy. Ketu, exaltation is Dhanu. Why? Because you need to move beyond religion to know God. I'll discuss this in detail in the Pachanga. Okay. Why, how Ketu takes you beyond religion to find God. So the exaltation is Dhanu because only you can move beyond religion only when you understand religion. And for understanding religion, Dhanu is very, very essential. Vrishchik, because once you move away from religion, once you move away from the tenets or from the commandments of religion, only then you can find God. But Vrishchik is also the sign of fanaticism. Religious fanaticism is always represented by Vrishchik. That is the reason most terrorists that you will come across, they will have the sign of Scorpio. Okay, their moon will be in Scorpio, or they will have Ketu in Scorpio, or their ascendant will be Scorpio. And I'm not saying I'm not singling out the Scorpios out here. Even that other half is Scorpio, whatever it is, right? But most of the terrorists will have Vrishchik as a very prominent sign. Scorpio is a very prominent sign. Okay. So Ketu represents religious fanaticism, and fanaticism can happen only in a Scorpio. Okay, Scorpio, if you look at fanatics, if you look at people who kill in the name of religion, who kill in the name of God, who kill in the name of anything they want, that is Scorpio. That is Vrishchik. Okay, Devil says Mithuna because Ketu is a sadhu. Okay, Ketu is a sadhu. Ketu does not have anything to do with regular, with regular life, and Mithuna is smooth talking. Ketu does not want to interact. Ketu just wants to give you moksha. Okay, Mithuna is the house where sexual encounters take place, and moksha and sex is the biggest impediment to moksha. Ketu, that is a fact that if you are indulged in sexual activities, of course you'll never find moksha. Of course, tantric sex is different, but sex is the biggest antithesis to moksha. Then comes the Mula Trikona of Ketu, which is Meena. Okay, why Meena? Because at the end of the day, you realize when you find God, you realize that God is all love. Okay, God is beyond religion. God is beyond all the books that you have read. God is beyond all the meditations that you have performed. God is the highest form of love. That is the reason Ketu exalts in Meena. Why? Because it wants to take you to God. And once you reach God, the role of Ketu is over. It has granted you moksha. Vrishchik, again, because it is the sign of transformation. Okay, you need a lot of emotional upheavals, because all forms of spirituality will always start when you go through some painful experiences. No one can become a spiritualist, or no one can become a spiritual guru if they have not had any painful experiences. If you look at the charts of all the spiritual masters and all the spiritual gurus, you will see that they have all of them have a very difficult chart. Okay, have very difficult conjunctions. A chart of, you can take the chart of Ramana Maharishi as a case in point, right? Now we come to Maran Karan Sthan. Okay, so just we'll quickly go through this, and then we can come to the bhavas. Okay, so Maran Karan Sthan, Surya, it finds death-like experience in the 12th house, because 12th house is the house of loss. Okay, the king does not want to give away his kingdom, right? So 12th house represents loss, and for Surya it represents loss of kingdom. Chandra, 8th house, because 8th house is the house of death. 8th house is the house of transformation. The mind does not want to transform. Mangala, 7th house, of course, a commander will be very headstrong. He does not like to listen to anyone, and if he is forced to listen to the spouse in the 7th house, gone. Buddha, 4th house, because Buddha is a child. Buddha does not want to settle down anywhere. Buddha is the eternal learner. So 4th house represents your domestic life. So you cannot domesticate a child. A child will find it very difficult to stay at home. 7th house, you cannot keep learning in a marriage. Either you have to concentrate on marriage, or you have to concentrate on learning. Okay, that is the reason Buddha also finds very, very difficult to adjust in the 7th house. Guru, also Buddha finds it difficult in the 7th house, because Buddha is fond of jokes. So he transforms marriage into a joke. That is also the reason why the 7th house is NKS for Buddha. Then comes Guru, 3rd house. Why 3rd house? Because 3rd house is the house of your Parakrama. Okay, Guru is a Brahman. You cannot expect a Brahmin to go and fight out there in the world, right? Third house is the effort that you put in the real world. Then comes Shukra. Shukra is the house of, Shukra is what? Shukra is your relationship. Shukra is your semen. So sixth house is the house of celibacy. Sixth house is the house of competition. That is the reason you find most love affairs dying down when there are 2 to 3 people in the picture, right? Most love affairs cannot survive. Most love affairs. Yes, I. Most love affairs, no, it cannot survive if if there is a lot of competition around. Most love affairs cannot survive if the relationship is a platonic one. Maybe out of out of something you commit that, okay, I'll be in a platonic relationship with this person, but at the end of the day it's very difficult to be in a platonic relationship. Okay. Guru in the third house. Ruchita has asked this thing. So third house is the house of Parakrama. Third house is the house of courage. Third house is the house of Maithuna. What is Maithuna? Maithuna is your sexual pleasure. Okay, so Guru is a Brahman. So you cannot expect a Brahman to go out there and fight in the real world, right? You cannot expect a Brahman who is engaged in the study of scriptures to engage in sexual activities. You cannot expect a Brahman who only knows religious scriptures. You cannot expect a Brahman to go and learn something new to survive in the world. Okay. MK is Nadi principle, not given in BPHS. Yes, that is true. But in Panchanga, this thing will be used. So because we will be concentrating more on the Panchanga, and because this class is mainly for the Panchanga participants, so we will be using just explaining this thing. Okay. Shani in the first house, I have explained. First house is the house where you are clearly visible to the world, and Shani is a servant. Okay, Shani does not want to take initiatives. Shani wants to renunciate. Shani does not want to take risks. Shani, Shani does not, Shani does not want to occupy the house of Surya. Surya, it exists in the first house of Aries, and Shani is the very antithesis of Surya. Okay, so Shani finds death-like pain in the first house. Rahu, ninth house. Why? Ninth house is the house of religion. So Rahu is the eternal rebel. Okay, all the rebellions that you see, whether you consider India's independence struggle, or whether you consider French Revolution, or whether you consider the recent Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, everything is associated with Rahu. So ninth house is the house of the government. Ninth house is where you are subservient to the government. Ninth house is where you are gaining from the government. So Rahu the rebel has nothing to do with the government. Rahu the rebel has nothing to do with religion. But in a as a contradiction, you will find that Rahu, ninth house Rahu will be found in most spiritual gurus. Okay, that is the reason most spiritual gurus will always break tradition. If you look at Sankaracharya, most common example of ninth house, it's I don't know if Arya Sankaracharya had Rahu in the ninth house, but if you look at Sankaracharya, how he broke tradition. Once you are initiated into sannyas, you actually do a shroud of yourself. Why? Because then you are considered to be free. You are considered to be free from all the obligations that you have, from all the obligations that your parents and others have from you. But even after being initiated into sannyas, what happened is that Sankaracharya, he went ahead and performed the last rites of his mother when he got the news of her death. So that was a very, that was a break that was something that he did to break the tradition. Okay, so that is an example of ninth house Rahu. Ketu, second house. Why? Because second house is a domestic life and Ketu is a sadhu. So you cannot put a sadhu, or you just imagine a Naga sadhu living a very domestic life. It's out of question. Okay. Now we come to bhavas. Okay. Look at the bhavas. So bhava is being, existence, occurring, appearance, state of mind, and reality. As I said, bhava is the field. Okay? Bhava is the field where the entire action happens, right? So there are 12 bhavas in the Kalpurish Kundali, APC. So one is Aries, 5 is Leo, 9 is Dhanu. So these are the fire signs. So if there are any problems in the fire signs, so I'm just listing out a few remedial measures which can be used by everyone. So if there are any problems in the fire signs, Vishnu will help you out. Artha is the earth signs. 2 is Taurus, 6 is Virgo, 10 is Capricorn or Makara. So if there are any problems with the earth signs, worship Ganesha. Kama represents your desire. Dharma represents your highest duties. Artha represents your wealth making activities. Kama represents your desires. So that is 3, 7, and 11. 3 is Gemini, 7 is Libra, 11 is Kumbha. So any problem with the air signs, worship Shiva. Moksha is your spirituality, your spiritual portion. Okay, 4, 8, 12. Again, there is a issue with the muting. Okay, moksha. So 4, 8, 12. This represents a spiritual portion. So if there is a to mute myself, just a minute.
Decon, mute yourself. Decon, please. Decon, mute yourself.
Decon mute करो यार.
Decon, mute.
Decon mute करो. Okay. So if there are any problems in water signs, worship Durga. Okay, so these are the general remedies that everyone can follow, right? Okay, next. Now look at the Kendra Bhavas. Okay, so the Kendra Bhavas, they are the foundations of a horoscope, right? The Kendra Bhavas, they are the foundations of the horoscope. So 1, 4, 7, 10, right? The first house, the fourth house, the seventh house, and the 10th house. Now I'm not looking at the signs. I'm just looking at the houses. First, fourth, seventh, 10th. So they are the Vishnu Sthanas. These are the pillars of the horoscope. So if the principle is that if any malefic goes into a Kendra Bhava, it will destroy the Kendra. Okay, if any malefic is going into the Kendra, it will weaken the Kendra, not destroy the Kendra, but it will weaken the Kendra. Then we come to the Trikon Bhavas. The Trikon Bhavas are 1, 5, and 9. Okay, so these are the Lakshmi Sthanas. These are where the resources are coming from. Okay, I'm not, again, 1 does not mean Aries, 5 does not mean Leo, 9 does not mean Dhanu. It only means the first house, the 5th house, and the 9th house. Dushthanas. So these are the houses that are attacking the Kendras. Okay, 6, 8, and 12. 12 is not actually a Dusthana. It is actually considered to be neutral. But 6th and 8th, these are the Dushthanas. 6th Lord is evil. 8th Lord is the highest evil. Okay. 3, 6, 10, 11. These are the Upachaya houses. Okay, these are the Upachaya houses. Pachaya. Everyone has heard about the word Pach. Pach. Pach means digest. Okay. Aya means growth. Okay. U Pach Aya. U means increase. Okay. U means increase. Pach means digest. Aya means growth. So these houses will grow along with time and practice. So 3, 6, 10, and 11. Again, 6 is considered to be a Dusthana, but it is also a Artha Bhava. Okay. So 3, 6 is considered to be a Rupachaya house. 10th is your, of course, it's a Kendra, and 11th is a Trishadaya house. Okay, 11th is also a Trishadaya house. You can look below. 3, 6, 11. 3, 6, and 11. These are evil houses. Okay, so the lords will always be malefic for the chart. Okay, according to the ascendant, the lords of 3, 6, and 11 will always be malefic. Now I don't mean 3 as Gemini. I'm just repeating myself. I don't mean 3 as Gemini. I don't mean 6 as Virgo. I don't mean 11 as Kumbha. Okay. Panafara, right? Panafara. Okay, Shubhasha, she is leaving, that's fine. Then comes Panafara. Panafara shows the past. Okay, the 5th house, trine from each house. So trine from each house, just remember what I'm saying, trine from each house. So 5th house is a Panafara from the 1st house. Okay, so the 5th house is known as the house of Purva Punya. Okay, the fifth house is known as the house of Purva Punya. This means all your past life activities that are helping you to shape your, that is helping you to shape your present and future. Right? That is the reason I wrote written shows your past. If your past activities have been good, you will always have very good Ashtakvarga points in your fifth house. If your past life activities have been bad, your fifth house will have low Ashtakvarga points. Then comes apoklima houses. These will show the future. So the ninth house trine from each house. I'll just explain what each house means. Okay. Ninth house trine from each house. That means from the first house, ninth house will show the future. Okay. Why future? Because ninth house is your luck. Right? Your future will be good only if you have your luck favoring you. Right? Now from trine from each house. So if you consider the second house, which will be the Panafara house, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for the second house, your sixth house will be a Panafara and your 10th house will be a Apoklima. Suppose you are considering the seventh house. So from the seventh house, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Your 11th house will be the Panafara. Then 12, 1, 2, 3. The third house will be your Apoklima. That is the meaning of trine from each house. Okay, so each house will have a Panapara house and each house will have a Apoklima house. Okay, so if you want the English translation, one is known as succident and one is known as accident, right? Now let's look at what the bhavas mean. So every time you are predicting, just remember this tip: houses first, signs later. This is very, very important for predictive astrology. People always mix this up. They always consider, most of people consider signs first, then houses. No, houses first, signs later. For example, if Jupiter is in the fourth house, it will always give good results because Jupiter exalts in the natural fourth house of Cancer, right? In the fourth house of KPC. The KPC will always start with Aries. So Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. So if Jupiter is in the fourth house, it will always give good results, even if that fourth house contains the sign of Makara or Capricorn. Even if Jupiter is debilitated in the fourth house of Makara, but because Jupiter is in the fourth house, it will still give good results. That person may not be very spiritual because the fourth house is containing Makara, but at the end of the day, Jupiter will give very good results for wealth as well as for happiness from children. Okay, so this is an important tip which I have not mentioned in the slide. Okay, first house is known as Lagna Bhava. As I said, just like the planets, the houses will also have their Sanskrit names. The first house is known as Lagna Bhava. Okay, Lagna Bhava, the primary Karaka. I've listed the primary Karaka. Okay, the primary Karaka is Surya. The Lagna Bhava represents body, it represents strength, it represents head, it also strength have written in 2 times, right? The second house represents Dhana Bhava. The Karaka is Guru. Okay, the Karaka is Guru. So the second house represents wealth, it represents sustenance, it represents close family, it represents throat, it represents speech. So for example, if a malefic planet like Saturn or Rahu goes into the second house, then it can be predicted that the person will lie through his or her teeth. Okay, but if that Rahu is well placed, then you have to see if the Rahu is getting certain afflictions. Okay, I have Rahu in the second house. Okay, so I don't lie. Why? Because Rahu is in the same sign of Aquarius. Okay, it is in the Swakshetra of Kumbha. So similarly, someone may have Rahu exalted, and that person would not lie. In fact, that person would be would be speaking the truth. Suppose someone has Rahu in Kanya or someone has Rahu in Gemini, then that person would be a very truthful person. Okay, but suppose someone has Rahu in Sagittarius, then that person would start lying because second house represents speech. Rahu is there, who is a cheater, and Dhanu is there, where Rahu is depleting. That is how you are interpreting the horoscope. Okay, what if second house is hemmed by a malefic? Can working guru better the second house? No, there has to be remedies have to be very specific. Can worshipping guru better the second house? Yes, certainly yes. But for planetary remedies, there is a Adi Devata and there is a Pratyadi Devata. So you have to worship the Pratyadi Devata of Guru. Okay, just find out the Pratyadi Devata, and then we can go for the remedies. Third house is known as the Bhatru Bhava, the house of brothers, or the Sahash Bhava. This is the house where you get your things due to courage. Okay, if you're courageous, the third house will give you things easily. The Karaka is Mangala, which represents effort, siblings, arms, soldiers, courage, and skills. Okay, so one way to improve, if suppose your third house is very, very affected, then one way to remedify the third house is to teach skills for free to others. Suppose you are giving free tuition classes to others, or you are teaching something for free. That is how it works. Okay, so can you throw some light on Adi and Pratyadi Devata at the end of the class? Maybe I can, if you're in the group, I can send you a list of the Adi and Pratyadi Devatas. Okay. Second house is Taurus and KPC. So, second house is Taurus and KBC. It's not KBC, it's KPC. So, isn't Shukra natural Karaka of second house? No. Second house, because the Karaka is derived from the meanings of the house. So, Guru is always the Karaka for wealth. Okay. So, Sukha Bhava or the Matru Bhava, the primary Karaka is Chandra. Okay. You can also have Shukra as a secondary Karaka. Okay, because Shukra is the Venus is the Karaka for happiness, but Chandra is the primary Karaka. So it represents home, mother, vehicles, chest, breast, heart, and feelings. So prediction: how if a malefic is transiting the fourth house, suppose there is a malefic in the fourth house, or if there is a malefic transiting the fourth house, you always have to check out for heart diseases. This is also a part of medical astrology. Maybe Dr. Subro Saab can actually have a look at his patient's chart and confirm. Okay. Putra Bhava, the fifth house, Putra Bhava, it is also known as a Mantra Bhava. Okay, it is also known as a Mantra Bhava. Fifth house is also your subconscious mind. Okay, some Lal Kitab astrologers will consider the third house to be your subconscious, but the fifth house is actually your subconscious mind. Okay, so because mantras work with the subconscious, so fifth house is the subconscious mind, right? So again, the Karaka is Guru. It represents intelligence, decision ability, children, solar plexus, intuition. Sixth house, Shatru or Ripu Bhava. So all the Dushthanas will have Shani as the Karaka. Okay, all the Dushthanas will have Shani as the Karaka, right? So enemies, servants, lower abdomen, bad habits. So bad habits are classified as Shadripus in astrology. Shadripus. So there are six sins. Okay, 6 sins. So that is the reason the sixth house is known as Shadripu. Shad means 6, Ripu is a bad habit. So what is Shadripu? What are the Shadripus that can come out from the sixth house? Kama or lust. This is due to Shukra. If Shukra is afflicted, then it can lead to a lot of lust. Okay. Krodha or anger, if Mangala is afflicted. Lobha or greed, if Rahu is afflicted, because Rahu is a Mahabhogi, as I had said. Moha or delusion, if Shani is afflicted, right? Shani keeps you away from learning new things. Matsarya or jealousy, Buddha is afflicted, because Buddha signifies competition, because he rules the original sixth house of Virgo. Okay, so if there is too much competition, you can become very jealous of your competitors, right? And Mada or arrogance. So fanaticism is an example of arrogance or Mada. My religion is the best, or my God is the best. That is an example of Mada or arrogance. So that is due to Ketu. Now note this: Sattva Grahas, Chandra, Surya, and Guru will not be responsible for Shadripus. That means if Sattva Grahas are present in the sixth house, it can actually signify some good things. Okay, Surya present in the sixth house, no enemies, right? Surya present in the sixth house, you can actually burn your enemies down, because Surya is directly looking at the 12th house. Okay, so you can burn your enemies down. Guru in the sixth house, people will not fight with you. Okay, people will not fight with you. People, if they come to fight with you, they will go away seeing your goodness. Chandra in the sixth house, good for money, although not very good for emotional stability. Now comes the seventh bhava, which is known as the Kalatra bhava. So of course the Karaka would be Shukra. Okay, the Karaka would be Shukra. It stands for business, it stands for spouse, it stands for pelvic region, it stands for desires. Next comes the eighth bhava, which is the Ayur bhava or the Randhara bhava. Again, as I said, the primary Karaka is Shani, but the eighth house will also have Mangala as the secondary Karaka. So it stands for depth, because Mangala is always a significator of depth. If Mangala is afflicted in the horoscope, They would be debt. Okay. Then it represents lenders, genitals, vulnerability. Ninth house, the dharma bhava or the guru bhava. It represents guru, teacher, father, ties, and dharma. 10th house, karma bhava. Now this is very important. Okay, 10th house, nobody mentions that the 10th house has actually 5 karakas, but Buddha is the primary karaka. The first karaka for the 10th house is Surya, because Surya is responsible for creating your resources. Without Surya, you cannot have a job. Without Surya, you cannot have resources for your business. That is the reason Surya is the primary karaka for the 10th house. The second karaka is Chandra, because Chandra represents your mind. You may have a job that is paying you millions, but if you are not happy in that work, you will quit that job very easily. It's Chandra. Okay. Buddha, of course, you will not do any work without money. Buddha is the reward that flows from work. Guru is the growth in your work. Okay, so Guru is also a karaka for the 10th house. If your Guru and your 10th Lord are not in a good relationship mutually, then you will find it very difficult to find promotion, or you will find it very difficult to gain from your work or to expand your business. Okay, and finally comes Shani. If your Shani is afflicted, okay, if your Shani is afflicted, if your Shani is afflicted, you will not be able to work very hard. Okay, you will not be able to work very hard. Now, the 10th house is actually regarded as the house of karma, but it will not signify profession. Okay, it will not signify profession. It will signify how you are completing work. This is very important. Okay, profession is not seen from the 10th house. This is a very common mistake that people make while analyzing gotras. Profession is never seen from the 10th house. Profession is never seen from the 10th Lord. The 10th Lord will only signify how you complete work. For example, if your 10th Lord is a Agni Graha, like Chandra or Mangala, or like Surya or Mangala, or if Ketu is placed in the 10th house, because Ketu is an Agni Graha, you will be excellent, you will be very well disciplined in completing whatever work is given to you. If the 10th Lord is Akasha Graha, like Jupiter, you will make money from whatever work you do. Okay, even if you are cleaning toilets, you will make good money from there. If your 10th house is ruled by a Jalagraha, like like Chandra or like Shukra, you will find it very difficult to complete work because of distractions. Okay, if your 10th house is lorded by Shani, you will complete work, but you will, or if your 10th house is ruled by Rahu, you will complete work, but you will take a lot of time to complete work because you will be learning new things along the way. Okay, so it's very important. So 10th house represents boss, teachings of father, niece, and also the respect that you gain, right? Then comes the 11th house, or the Labha Bhava, which is ruled by Guru. So 11th house, as I said, is a Prishadhaya. This labha, or the gains that is coming from, this gain will come from a cost. Okay, every time you go to work, you are putting your body on the line, right? You are traveling for work. No, you never know when you may suffer an accident and you may end up in the hospital. Okay, so this gain will often come from a cost. Will often come at a cost. And the 11th house it stands for gains, fame, friends, network circles, staffs, achievements, and punishments, because this is the seat of Rudra in the horoscope. Okay, this is the seat of Rudra in the horoscope, Harasthana, right? So this is the Prishadhaya, the highest evil. Okay, the highest evil. The 8th Lord is the most evil. The 11th Lord is the highest evil. Now, why the 8th Lord is the most evil? Because if you count from the 11th house, the 10th from the 11th house is the 8th house. Okay, so Rudra is sitting there in the 11th house. It is Trishul. Okay, Rudra is sitting there in the 11th house. It is Trishul. And he fires that Trishul, and that Trishul will land up in the 8th house. So whatever problems come from the 8th house, they are well and truly beyond your control. I hope I'm being very clear here. Okay, Rudra is firing his Trishul from the 10th house. So work of Rudra is being done from the 11th house. So 10th is the house for work, and that work 10th from the 11th house is the 8th house. So Rudra is firing his Trishul into the 8th house. So that Trishul is being carried to different parts of the horoscope by the 8th Lord. So that is the reason wherever the 8th Lord goes, it will always create trouble in that house. For example, 8th Lord is going to the 1st house, you will never be able to wake up early. 8th Lord going to the 5th house, you will have problems after childbirth. 8th Lord going to the 4th house, you will have problems in your domestic life. So that is how the 8th Lord is giving you the punishment. Okay. 12th house, the Vyaya Bhava, it is again being ruled by Shani. This is actually considered to be a neutral house, but it represents hospitals, ashrams, foreign lands, bill collectors, losses, feet, sleep, rest, and meditation. Okay, so the Lagna Lord. Now the first house Lord is known as a Lagna Lord. So if the Lagna Lord, it is not considered to be very good if the Lagna Lord is actually going to the Dushthanas. For example, the Lagna Lord going to the sixth house, it represents that the person will always find enemies in work. The person will always struggle a lot with respect to enemies, with respect to deaths and diseases. Lagna Lord going to the eighth house, the person will always take lots of wrong decisions. Okay, the person will be very straightforward, but he or she will take lots of wrong decisions. And Lagna Lord going to the 12th house, the person, the native decisions will always be impressionable. Impressionable means if the native takes a decision, someone will say something and he or she will quickly change their decision, change their mind. That is how the Lagna Lord is impacted by going into the Dushthanas. Okay. Now, Bhavat principle. So, what is the principle? Signs from a house will have the same significations for that particular area of life as the Lagna has for oneself. Okay, so as I had said, the Lagna or the first house, it represents you. It represents the head. It represents you. Okay, your body. So, from the Lagna, the fourth house is your domestic life. So now, for example, let's apply the principle of Bhavat Bhavam. As I said regarding the regarding the Hara Bhava. The Harasthana is the 11th house. 10th from the Harasthana is the 8th house. Okay, 10th from the Harasthana is the 8th house. So that means the work of Rudra is being done from the 8th house. So similarly, 7th house is for spouse. Okay, 7th house is for your marriage. So 8th house is for the in-laws of your spouse. Why? Because the second house is what? Second house denotes family. So second from the 7th house brings us to the 8th house. So 8th house will represent the family of the spouse. Okay, so this Bhavat Bhavam principle can be extended to everywhere. Okay, there is also a principle which is being blown out of proportion. Okay, that is known as the Karako Bhavanashaya principle. So it is said that if the primary Karakas of the house are present in the house itself, then that house is destroyed. No, that is a very wrong concept. Okay, suppose someone will say if the Dhana Bhava or the second house contains Guru, then that house is destroyed. It's a very wrong concept. Karaka Bhava Nashaya principle applies only when the house is afflicted. That means, suppose I'm just giving the example of Guru in the second house. So Karaka Bhava Nashaya will happen if the second house is afflicted by means of malefic associations or malefic aspects. If Guru itself is afflicted, okay, if Guru is itself is afflicted, and the houses ruled by Guru is afflicted, okay, only then Karaka Bhavanashaya will apply. The house has to be afflicted, the Karaka has to be afflicted, and the signs that are being ruled by Guru, they have to be afflicted. Only then Karako Bhavanashaya applies. So Karaka Bhavanashaya means that house has become completely incapable of giving you results. Okay, so if Karaka Bhavanashaya is happening in the 5th house, the native may never earn happiness from children, the native may never have children, or the native may never have a spiritual, spiritual contact with a non-spiritual person. All right. Now we come to the signs or the rashis. Okay, so rashi represents a heap, a pile, a group, or compilation. But a heap of what? A heap of karmas. Okay, so there are 12 rashis. So these rashis are actually responsible for looking at the karmic blueprint of a horoscope. Okay, the rashis will will give information about what the karma is for a particular person. Okay, so now before we study rashis, we have to look at Ayanamsha. So Ayanamsha is the longitudinal difference between the tropical and sidereal zodiac. So as we know, Vedic astrology is based on the sidereal zodiac, and Western astrology is based on the tropical zodiac. Okay, so it refers to the amount of precision of the equinoxes. So now I'll explain Ayanamsha in details in the Panchanga class, but I'll just give you an example to help you understand how Ayanamsha works. Okay, so for example, suppose a person is traveling in a train from Kolkata to Mumbai. Okay, so suppose the distance between Kolkata to Mumbai is suppose 500 kilometers. Okay, just giving you an example. So Western astrology, what it will do, it will consider only those 500 kilometers. Okay, Western astrology will consider only those 500 kilometers. But what Vedic astrology will do? Now suppose a person is traveling, as I said, is traveling in a train from Kolkata to Mumbai. Now that person will not sit at the same place in the train. Maybe he will have a reservation in place and he'll sit at the he'll sleep at the same seat, but he will get down at the station to have food. Maybe he will sit at another seat to interact with another passenger. Maybe he is feeling bored by sitting at the first seat, and then he comes, if the fourth seat is empty, he's coming, the fourth seat and then sitting there. So in this way, the person will keep on moving within the same compartment of that train. He will also be getting down at the station to have his food and things like that. So all these things will also add up to the total of 500 kilometers. Okay, the distance that is being traveled by the person in doing these activities while getting down for food or while going to the toilet or while changing his compartment or while changing his shifting his seat from one place to the other, or maybe while shifting his seat to talk to another passenger. So all these distances will also be considered by Vedic astrology, by the sidereal zodiac. So this difference gives rise to a concept which is known as Ayanamsha. Okay, so this is a very basic premise to understand. Of course, I'll discuss this in detail in the Panchanga class. So Vedic astrology uses the sidereal zodiac. As I said, Western astrology uses the tropical zodiac. So the difference that comes between the two is because of Ayanamsha. Okay, so the most preferred or the most popular Ayanamsha is Lahiri Ayanamsha. It is also known as the Lahiri Chitra Paksha. That means it is opposite to Chitra Nakshatra. Okay, Paksha means opposition. Then other Ayanamshas are Pagan Bradley Ayanamsha. Then there is Ayanamsha that was given by P.V. Raman, Krishnamurti. And then there is also Sayana Ayanamsha. Okay, so Sayana Ayanamsha is similar to results that is being given in the tropical zodiac. Okay, that is Sayana Ayanamsha. Right. Okay, now the Rashis. So we are reaching the end hopefully. So the Rashis, like the planets, the Rashis will also have their tattva. Okay, like the planets, the Rashis will also have a tattva. Mesha or Aries is Agni tattva. It is known as ram. It is the iconography is associated with a ram. Now, if you look at a ram, the ram will always inhabit mountainous regions. So the ram will not be afraid of taking risks. If you look at even the smallest places where which is not possible to climb, the ram will easily climb those places. The ram is always a risk taker. Suppose you will always see a ram fighting with another ram without any reason. So if you look at Aries, these people will be born risk takers. They will completely, they will completely jump into unknown things without knowing the consequences. Okay, it has something to do with the rulership of Mars, of course. But if you want to understand the Rashis, you have to understand the animals that are, how to determine the Rashi. That is determined where your moon is placed. Okay, where your moon is placed. Then comes Vrishabha. It is a Prithvi Tattva Rashi. This is a bull. So how do you see a bull? A bull is found in agricultural lands. A bull is found in the households. So Vrishabha represents food. Where food, how is food produced? Food is produced from the agricultural lands. Vrishabha also represents the stubbornness. It also represents a certain degree of stubbornness because the bull is very, very stubborn. It does not like to move. It does not like to, it doesn't like to do much except when goaded by its owner or things like that. Okay, the bull likes to sit at a place and and chew the cud. So it's also the house of pleasure, right? Then comes Mithuna, which is a Vayu Tattva Rashi. So Mithuna actually comes from the word Maithuna. Maithuna, as I said, it means sexual interaction. Okay, so Mithuna is represented by a man holding a club and a woman holding a musical instrument, right? So, okay, Sandhya Nayaji, you can leave. Maybe you can watch this on YouTube later on. So Mithuna is actually represented by a man holding a club and a woman holding a musical instrument. So this is a Rashi for sexual interaction. And Mithuna represents places where sexual encounters happen, like restaurants, like gyms, like theaters. Okay. Aries represents mountainous regions. Okay, mountainous and forest regions. Vrishabha represents agricultural fields. Okay, Vrishabha also represents houses. Okay, Vrishabha also represents the kitchen, right? Karaka, it is Jala Tattva. It is represented by a crab. So a crab, a crab will always be. If you keep a crab in a bottle or in a jar, you'll see that crab always trying to make itself comfortable there wherever it is seated. Okay, so Karaka means a crab. That means a crab also represents being together, the significance of being together. So this is your domestic environment. This is your bedroom. Okay, this is a place where emotional attachments happen. Okay, so emotional attachments can only happen in the bedroom, can only happen in your mother's arms. Then Simha, it represents like Aries, it represents mountainous regions. Okay, but Aries, Simha also represents plateaus. Unlike Aries does not represent plateaus. Simha represents plateaus because a lion always likes to live in an elevated atmosphere. Okay, then Kanya or Virgo, it represents Prithvi. Okay, so it represents a young woman often in a boat holding wheat in one hand and fire in the other. So Virgo, as I said, it represents analytical areas. So data science, it represents data science, it represents analytics, people who are working in analytics, it represents fields. Okay, it represents fertile fields, right? Whenever a rice crop grows, the field looks very, very beautiful. So that field is Virgo. Okay, it also represents, okay, this is very, very important. People think that Venusian signs are representative of prostitute houses, but actually Virgo is representative of brothels. Okay, because you see the young woman, she is alone. Okay, and in a brothel you will always find the party very, very early. Okay, so Virgo represents brothels, and if Venus is afflicted in Virgo, as I said, Venus debiliates in Virgo, and Venus and debiliation means losing of values. Okay, debiliation means losing of values. No, Kanya is not a barren land. Capricorn and Aquarius are barren lands. Okay. So Venus debiliates in Virgo. Okay, so Venus means losing. So the Venus debiliates means what? Debiliates means losing the qualities. So Venus loses its qualities in Virgo. That is the reason Virgo represents prostitute houses. Then comes Libra. As I said, Libra represents marketplaces. Okay, Libra represents where all your dealings and all the barter systems happen. Okay, Vrishchika represents small caves and crevices where insects reside. Okay, that is represented by a scorpion. Dhanu represents all government offices, government institutions. The house of the Guru. Dhanu also represents the house of the Guru. So the appearance is of a centaur holding a bow from which he is about to shoot an arrow. So this means Dhanu also represents a centaur is a half human, half horse. Okay. So Dhanu represents losing that animal nature to become one with the divine. So if you look at Hindu mythology, Hanuman has a monkey face and a human body. Ganesha has a human body and an elephant face. So it means you are losing your animal nature to become more and more, to come more and more closer to God. That is the meaning of the centaur who is holding a bow, and that bow is the arrow. That bow is shooting the arrow of knowledge. Okay. Then comes Makara. So crocodile with the upper body of a deer, or a fish with the upper body of a goat. So Makara represents marshy lands. Okay, Makara represents cold areas where no one goes. If I make you, as I said, if I make you walk in a marshy land, the first thing that you will experience is fear, because you do not know what lurks under that marshy land. It could be insects also, it could be poisonous snakes also, right? And if you look at Makara, if you look at the lifestyle of a crocodile can wait for eternity for its prey. Okay, so once the prey comes, the crocodile may look very, very harmless, but once the crocodile catches the prey in its teeth, it will not give up until the prey is dead, or until the prey manages to free himself after a lot of bloodshed. Okay, so people with Capricorn moon or with Capricorn or with Capricorn lagna, they will be very, very patient, just like the crocodile. Okay, the crocodile has a lot of strength. These people may look weak, a person with Capricorn ascendant or Capricorn moon, but at the end of the day, they have a lot of reserve strength. Okay, then Kumbha. As I said, this represents the graveyard. Okay, Kumbha represents the graveyard. So a man with a pitcher so tilted on his shoulder as to suggest that the contents are being poured out. So when a person is pouring out something from a pitcher, it could be poison also. It could be nectar also. So you do not know. So Kumbha keeps you guessing. Kumbha is the house of illusions. Okay, if you are seeing a man or a woman with a pitcher, and that person is, suppose you are very thirsty and someone comes to you with a pitcher and pours out the contents of the pitcher, you'll be very apprehensive of drinking that water from that pitcher, because you do not know whether the pitcher contains nectar or water or poison. So that is the reason Kumbha is has the partial ownership of Rahu, because Rahu represents illusions. Okay, and then Meena, it represents two fishes swimming in opposite directions. So one fish represents the material direction. As Kumbha is the graveyard, so Rudra sits in the 11th house. No, Kumbha is the graveyard because Rudra sits in Kumbha. Okay, it's not the other way around. Then Meena, it represents two fishes swimming in opposite directions. So Meena represents freedom. Okay, Meena represents freedom. So you can, whenever you are free, you are either totally free to go in the material direction, or you are free to go in the spiritual direction. So the two fishes, they are trying to, one fish is trying to move in the material direction and the other is trying to move in the spiritual direction. So Meena represents huge oceans. Okay, Meena represents huge oceans or the surface underneath the oceans, things like that. All right. Now, the different styles of a horoscope. So horoscope is nothing but a snapshot of the sky at the moment when you were born. Okay. Horoscope is nothing but the snapshot of the sky at the exact time when you were born. And you may ask me when the birth time should be calculated. It is calculated when the umbilical cord is cut from the baby. Okay, the moment the umbilical cord is cut, then that is the time which is regarded as the birth time. That is the exact time. Okay, so most of us would have a problem with birth time rectification, but because a lagna has a expiry period of 2.5 hours, so it does not really matter unless and until you are going into the higher divisional charts like Shashti Amsha or the D45. All right, so different styles of a horoscope. We have the East Indian chart, the North Indian chart, and the South Indian chart. Okay, I'll just teach you how to read, and then we can wrap it up. Right. So East Indian chart and South Indian chart is recommended if you want to learn clearly the aspects of the planets. Okay, but North Indian chart is the most popular chart. It is used in most astrology apps, but you can just change your settings and go for the East Indian and North Indian and the South Indian. Okay, so now see, this is the East Indian chart. Okay, this is the East Indian chart. So the East Indian chart, it will start with, this is the first house. This is the first house, and it will move in an anti-clockwise direction. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So wherever the ascendant is, there will be a double line placed in this way. Okay, there will be a double line placed in this way that represents the rising sign or the lagna or the ascendant. Okay, so it will move in an anti-clockwise direction this way. Okay, North Indian chart will be similar. This is the first house. Okay, so this may not contain Aries. Okay, Aries may be here, but this is always the first house, second house, third house, fourth house. So North Indian chart does not need to have a lagna. Okay, the first house is always considered to be the rising sign. So this is the first house, right? Suppose this is the sign of Kumbha. So here, suppose you see the number 11. Okay, here you see number 11. This means the person's rising sign will be Kumbha. Suppose here you see number 8. This means the person's rising sign will be Scorpio. Okay, suppose here you see number 7. Then the person's rising sign will be Libra. Then comes the South Indian chart. So South Indian chart, here Aries will always be here. Okay, Aries will always be here. As far as the ascendant is concerned, they will put double lines. Okay, in the East Indian chart also, Aries will always be here. If any sign becomes the ascendant, they will put a double line. Only in case of North Indian chart, the numbers will be different. So suppose there is a 6 here, so this means the person is Virgo rising. Okay, but for East Indian chart, Aries will always be there. Only in case of the rising sign, they will put a double dash. Similarly, for South Indian chart, Aries will always be here in this position, as I've mentioned. And for the rising sign, they will put a double dash. Okay. So this is all about this just covered the history of astrology, how it originates, the types of astrology, given a brief reference on the planets, on the signs and the houses, and also on the chart. So this is all about the basics to get you started. Okay, so if you have any questions, of course, you can certainly let me know. Okay, in the group as well as in the as well as just a minute. Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can certainly let me know in the group. I'll also wait for your questions on Facebook, and maybe every Saturday or maybe every Friday we can have a class on Vedic astrology. That would be for free. We'll start with the planets, what each of the 9 planets mean. We'll go into details about what the sun represents in the horoscope or what Saturn represents in the horoscope, and then maybe we can I'm just stopping to share, and then maybe we can go into details with what the signs and what the nakshatras mean. All right, so I look forward to your presence in the Panchanga Foundation classes that will be happening on the 5th of September at 7:30 p.m. IST. Other than that, I would also be looking forward to your questions in the group as they are there, because we'll also be having a dedicated Q&A session at the end. Okay. So Sachin Keswani ji, I'll just can you share your contact information again? I'm just giving you my number. You can contact me on WhatsApp later on. And for others who are there, I think all of you are familiar with me. I thank all of you for taking your time, for taking time out of your valuable schedule to join. Of course, I know that Dr. Saab is very, very busy, but still he is a very enthusiastic learner. So I hope everyone learned something from this class, as I learned while compiling the slides. Let's share the slides in the group so that everyone can benefit. And if anyone has any questions, they can always ask me in the group. So I'll just open up this thing for 5 minutes if you have any inquiries to make, and then we can end the meeting perhaps. Okay, so Dr. Saab has asked Panchanga class timing. Of course, we are starting from 7:30, Dr. Sir, as we had mentioned, 5th of September. That means the day after tomorrow. I look forward to interacting with you during that class.
It is weekly one, right? Weekly class, right?
All right, so I hope everyone takes back something positive from this session, and I'll be ending the meeting in the next minute. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Devarshi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.